Chapter 1039, Arrogant Deskmate 2. 1039 Arrogant Deskmate 2. The hundreds of students all stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. How could Feng Wu yell at Feng Sun like that? He was young Lord Feng and the Crown Prince's buddy. Instantly, everyone quieted down and began to exchange looks of bewilderment. Feng Wu glared at Feng Sun. I never knew this side of you, Feng Sun. You can't bully the weak just because you have powerful backing. I'm so disappointed. The others were so sure that young Lord Feng would hit her back, for that was what Feng Sun would typically do. However, to everyone's surprise, Feng Sun only lowered his head and looked too intimidated to speak his mind. He gave Feng Wu an aggrieved look. Why did he look like an abandoned wife? How could that be? That didn't seem right at all. Throwing a dirty look at Feng Sun, Feng Wu left her seat to help that boy to his feet. Feng Sun couldn't let her touch the boy's hands. If he let that happen, he was sure that Boss Jun would kill him later. Leave it to me. Let me. Feng Sun rushed over and helped the guy to his feet. He was very rough with his actions, which almost made the student vomit blood. Feng Wu frowned and checked the boy's pulse. Feng Sun wanted to stop her, but Feng Wu cast a stern look at him. Do you want to check his pulse then? Feng Sun backed away in embarrassment. He didn't know how to do that. Feng Wu could feel an intense gaze on her back, which seemed to set her on fire. However, she refrained from looking back and acted as if no one was there. After checking his pulse, Feng Wu heaved a sigh of relief. Your internal organs are unharmed. It's only some surface bleeding. A blood-clotting pill will heal you in no time. Supported by young Lord Feng, the teenager was already very anxious. When he looked up and saw the murderous look in the Crown Prince's eyes, he almost burst into tears. I'm fine. I'm really fine. Instinct told him that Feng Wu was the reason that he had gotten himself thrown out. Both Feng Sun and His Royal Highness were warning him with their eyes that Feng Wu was strictly off limits. That was why the teenager snatched the pill Feng Wu gave him, stuffed it into his mouth, then turned to run away. Feng Wu frowned. But your chest needs to be massaged to activate blood circulation. But the teenager was long gone. He had run out of sight. The Crown Prince was giving off a terrifying and suffocating energy. The air seemed to freeze, and the cold made everyone's teeth chatter. They were too scared to speak a word. What was his name? Feng Wu frowned. Tell him to come to me later. He'll need another blood-clotting pill to make a quick recovery. Feng Wu didn't know if she was mistaken, but when she asked for the person's name, the biting cold in the classroom seemed to ease a little. She went back to her seat after that. All she wanted was to get through this class safely. She wondered if her luck would hold out. Mr. Hu could barely remember what he had taught today. Realizing that it would still be a long while before the class ended, he felt like crying with frustration. He could only go back to his lecture. Jun Linyuan glanced casually at Feng Wu, only to realize that the girl had been reading her book this whole time without looking at him. Moreover, she hadn't looked at him since the beginning of the class. Did he annoy her that much? He poked Feng Wu's arm with his pen. Feng Wu moved her arm away and went on ignoring him. He poked her arm again. Feng Wu moved her arm off the desk altogether. Jun Linyuan bit his lower lip displeased. A man in love was as good as an idiot. Although the Crown Prince hadn't realized how possessive he had become toward Feng Wu, he was in fact already under her spell. So she had decided to ignore him, had she? Thump. Chapter 1040, Jun Linyuan. What the hell do you what? 1. Chapter 1040 Jun Linyuan. What the hell do you what? 1. Jun Linyuan smacked his desk. WTF. The students around him weren't the only ones scared. Even Mr. Hu on the dais jumped at the sound. All eyes were on Jun Linyuan. He stared at Mr. Hu with eyes that reminded one of a raging storm. You made too many mistakes. Mr. Hu blanched. That comment from the Crown Prince would ruin his career. Mr. Hu could try to argue his way out of it if the critique had been from someone else. But this was the Crown Prince. The teenager would mercilessly crush any different opinions. And Mr. Hu couldn't even think about opposing him. Feng Wu frowned a little and darted a look at Jun Linyuan. He made errors on 2 figures and missed 3 key points. But everything else was fine. Surely it's nothing worth ruining his career over. And the so-called mistakes were only noticeable if one was really picky. To most people, Mr. Hu was a good teacher. However, the other students only looked at Feng Wu sympathetically. What was wrong with Feng Wu? His Royal Highness was already targeting her. What she should be doing now was to stay out of sight. Instead, she had drawn more attention to herself. Did she have a death wish or something? Would the infuriated His Royal Highness throttle Feng Wu on the spot? At that thought, the look in their eyes turned even more sympathetic. However, to everyone's surprise, the Crown Prince did no such thing. Meanwhile, Jun Linyuan was secretly enjoying the moment, for he had finally caught her attention, and she was no longer ignoring him. Trying to make the best use of this opportunity, Jun Linyuan rose to his feet and went up to the dais. Mr. Hu stared at the Crown Prince in bewilderment. What was going on here? Feng Sun could read Jun Linyuan's mind. Before, he had made the wrong assumption about the Crown Prince, and had been led further and further away down the wrong path. Ever since Xianyi corrected him, however, Feng Sun could see what Jun Linyuan was doing with a single glance. Hence, Feng Sun hurried over at once and half-dragged Mr. Hu off the dais. Jun Linyuan stood there with a proud, authoritative look in his eyes. The students all remained seated, feeling anxious and flustered as they wondered what His Royal Highness was doing. It then occurred to them that this whole time, the Crown Prince had kept his intimidating gaze on Feng Wu, almost without blinking. It felt as if he wanted to eat the beautiful girl whole. How scary those eyes were. They then turned to look at Feng Wu. Despite being stared at by those terrifying eyes, Feng Wu remained seated with her back ramrod straight. The look on her face never changed and her eyes looked calm. She was such a strong character. People began to ask themselves, if they were the ones being stared at, would they be able to stay as calm as Feng Wu? The answer was no. Did you just contradict me? Jun Linyuan asked in an arrogant, domineering manner. One could detect murderous intent in his brooding eyes. How scary those eyes were. The other students all lowered their eyes and kept their gazes on the floor, trying their best not to attract any attention. No one dared to look into Jun Linyuan's terrifying eyes. They could tell that the Crown Prince was genuinely mad and wanted revenge. Out of all the people Feng Wu could offend, it had to be the Crown Prince, who was as ferocious as any magical beast. Did she have a death wish? No one was bold enough to speak up for Feng Wu. Minding their own business was a much safer option. Feng Wu was displeased at being stared at by Jun Linyuan, and she looked pissed. She was furious inwardly. She had done a good deed in Proud Snowfield by saving Jun Linyuan's life. However, not only wasn't she thanked for it, she ran into even more trouble. Chapter 1041 Jun Linyuan, what the hell do you what? 2. Chapter 1041 Jun Linyuan, what the hell do you what? 2. Just when everyone thought that Feng Wu would give in and apologize, Feng Wu bolted up and glared at the Crown Prince. Jun Linyuan, what the hell do you want? Those words shocked everyone. Holy shit. Little Feng Wu was. She had just openly retorted to His Royal Highness like an arrogant peacock. His Royal Highness. She would be killed. Everyone began to throw her warning glances, reminding her to cherish her own life. She was so pretty and so smart that they would hate to see her die. But they had clearly thought wrong once again. Standing proudly on the platform with his hands behind his back, Jun Linyuan smirked. There seemed to be a dark red flicker in his black eyes. Little Feng Wu, I see that you really have a death wish. Feng Wu snorted. Bring it on. Do whatever you want. You don't scare me. Oh no. Everyone else cried out in their heads at what was about to happen. Feng Wu was so getting killed. The Crown Prince seemed provoked as well. So, I see that death really doesn't scare you. Feng Wu glowered at Jun Linyuan. What's there to be scared of? I'd love to see you try and kill me. She was in a bad mood after starting the day with Mu Yaorao trying to frame her. Then Jun Linyuan, the most unpredictable guy, showed up, annoying Feng Wu even more. Death doesn't scare you. How about what happens to them? A dangerous look flickered in Jun Linyuan's black eyes. Feng Wu was baffled. Them? How do they have anything to do with this? Jun Linyuan grinned viciously. Since you already know so much, you'll be teaching the class today. Make one mistake, and all your classmates down there will pay. What's that supposed to mean? Feng Wu's pupils contracted. Jun Linyuan said, You know what I mean. Feng Wu flared up. You have a problem with me. Why take it out on them? Jun Linyuan said, Because you're not afraid of death. Feng Wu gritted her teeth. Jun Linyuan went on, But they are. Feng Wu stomped her foot. Jun Linyuan. She was sure that Jun Linyuan was doing this on purpose. The crown prince darted a satisfied glance at her, and he had a proud look on his handsome, chiseled face. Taking a deep breath, Feng Wu fought back the urge to rush over and throttle him. All he ever did was bully her. Jun Linyuan's death threat didn't scare Feng Wu at all, but she couldn't say the same for the other students. One could tell how scared they were from their bloodless faces. Jun Linyuan wouldn't actually kill them, but if he wanted to vent his anger, he could easily make these students withdraw from the college. It would be a piece of cake for him. Feng Wu couldn't care less about such a threat to herself, but she would feel guilty if these students had to withdraw from school or suffered an accident because of her. The guilt would eventually become a burden to her cultivation. Thump. Feng Wu smacked the desk in frustration. She glared at Jun Linyuan without blinking. He was indeed a handsome man, with his well-defined bone structure and his exquisite features. He had a beauty that would take one's breath away and sweep them off their feet. However, with that lousy temper of his, he was just as abominable. You want me to teach this class? So be it. Bring it on. Feng Wu marched onto the dais. When she was in front of Jun Linyuan, she raised her foot to step down hard on his. Shit. The students were almost scared out of their wits. Did she want to be killed now? However, the instant Feng Wu's foot was about to land, Jun Linyuan shifted and moved to stand behind Feng Wu. Missing her target, Feng Wu lost her footing and pitched forward involuntarily. Her exquisite face was about to smash into the desk in the first row. Chapter 1042 Jun Linyuan. What the hell do you what? 3. Chapter 1042 Jun Linyuan. What the hell do you what? 3. With a wave of his hand, Jun Linyuan pulled Feng Wu back into his arms. Thump. Feng Wu's nose bumped into Jun Linyuan's chest, making her grunt. Shit. The students in the classroom were ready to sing an elegy for Feng Wu. She was so doomed. They believed that Feng Wu was really going to die. His Royal Highness would smash her head open like he was cracking open a watermelon. It was common knowledge that His Royal Highness was a neat freak. Wasn't there a rumor where some noble young lady touched His Royal Highness's sleeve and ended up having her entire arm cut off by the savage Crown Prince? Little Feng Wu had just flown into the Crown Prince's arms. Would he cut her into pieces? Duan Chaoga was so frightened that she wanted to stand up and cry out, Your Royal Highness, please don't kill Xiao Wu. However, she realized that she couldn't move. She felt as if she had been wrapped inside a transparent, jelly cocoon, and she couldn't move no matter how hard she struggled. Flustered and anxious, Chaoga almost burst into tears. Meanwhile, most of the other students in the classroom had covered their eyes and were peeking through their fingers, fearing what they might see. Gong Sunqing eyed Feng Wu sympathetically. However scared she was of Jun Linyuan, she still recalled that Feng Wu saved her life once. Gritting her teeth, Gong Sunqing rose to her feet. Your Royal Highness, please spare Feng Wu's life. Her voice startled the two people on the dais, especially the proud Crown Prince. With Feng Wu's soft body in his arms, he was overwhelmed by the fragrance characteristic of teenage girls. There was a gentle look in the Crown Prince's eyes now, and he had almost forgotten where he was. All the girl ever did was run away from him, but now, she wasn't going anywhere, was she? However, what Gong Sunqing said woke Jun Linyuan up from his daydream. Spare Feng Wu's life? Where had that come from? The look in the Crown Prince's black eyes was so cold that it scared the wits out of anyone. Looking into Jun Linyuan's eyes, Gong Sunqing felt a cold sensation in her chest, and a chill also ran down her spine. That was so frightening. Feng Sun reached out and dragged Gong Sunqing away. He then whispered, Boss Jun won't kill little Feng Wu. All that guy ever did was piss Feng Wu off. But Gong Sun-ching didn't buy it. Clenching her fists, she looked rather sad. Feng Wu is actually a really nice person. I haven't gotten around to telling her that I want to be her friend. Feng Sun gave Gong Sun-ching a sympathetic look. The girl had been misled the way he had been, thinking that Boss Jun hated little Feng Wu. Feng Sun couldn't remember how many times he had made a fool of himself, or gotten beaten up for it. Seeing the anxious looks on the students' faces, and recalling the silly things he had done to keep Boss Jun away from Feng Wu, Feng Sun felt so humiliated. Looking up at Jun Linyuan on the dais, Feng Sun was amazed at what Boss Jun had achieved. He liked the girl, but what he did made everyone think that he hated her. He would never be able to win a girl's heart this way. Feng Wu would only hate him for his actions. As expected, Feng Wu shoved Jun Linyuan away. "Don't touch me." The other students were all speechless. Jun Linyuan smirked. "I touch you? You think too highly of yourself." The other students all nodded, agreeing with him. If the crown prince wanted to do something to a girl, she would simply lie down willingly. Feng Wu obviously wasn't a candidate. Feng Wu was so mad that her head spun. She had made up her mind. Jun Linyuan had just become the person she hated the most, bumping Zhou Qingwan down to second place. Chapter 1043. That is no way to woo a girl. 1043. That is no way to woo a girl. To the other students' surprise, the crown prince stepped off the dais in the end. His long, straight legs took him off the dais at an unhurried pace. Scanning the classroom with his cold eyes, he reminded one of an emperor inspecting his land. His casual yet arrogant demeanor made one want to kneel at his feet. He was born to be a leader. He was born to rule the continent. Feng Wu, on the other hand, was still on the dais without a scratch on her. She was still alive. Everyone exchanged looks of bewilderment and found it unbelievable. But that was what happened. They then turned to study the crown prince's face. Jun Linyuan had sat down in a chair, looking completely at ease. On his sculptured face, one could detect a faintly intrigued look in his beautiful eyes. He pursed his thin lips and was smiling a little. He began to tap the desk rhythmically with his slender fingers. Clearly, he was waiting for Feng Wu to make her move. That explained it. The students believed that His Royal Highness was going to fatten the pig before he slaughtered it. Feng Wu started her lecture by succinctly sketching out the points that Mr. Hu had been vague on. She then moved on to the actual teaching. Feng Wu's talent was unquestionable. She had been taught by Mu Jiuzhou himself, and already knew enough to become an advanced tutor here in Imperial College. Teaching a simple Year 1 class was far from a challenge to her. On the dais, her eyes twinkled as she spoke in high spirits. Her face shone with the light of wisdom. In the sunlight, she reminded one of the first dew on a spring morning, and was full of life. Her refreshing beauty could take one's breath away. Given Jun Linyuan's status and popularity, he had seen his fair share of girls, although he had ignored most of them. However, he had never met someone so attractive, who seemed to shine from within. Even someone as experienced as Jun Linyuan was infatuated, to say nothing of other people. Everyone was immersed in Feng Wu's teaching, amazed looks in their eyes. Scanning the room out of the corner of his eye, Jun Linyuan saw that all the boys in the classroom were fascinated by Feng Wu, and he didn't like that at all. Thump. Feng Wu was enjoying teaching when the crown prince smacked the desk. The sound made everyone jump. All of them had been hanging on to Feng Wu's every word, taking in the cultivation world she described, and savoring the profound knowledge in her teaching. The more they chewed on her words, the more mysterious they found them to be. However, that train of thought was broken at that critical moment. All eyes turned to the man at the center of the classroom. No one dared to utter a word or express their anger, but they certainly weren't happy about it. Feng Wu had noticed that several students had almost reached epiphanies, and had planned to continue teaching until they could break through. However, Jun Linyuan's interruption destroyed that opportunity for them. Feng Wu was infuriated. However, before she could speak, Jun Linyuan said, "Get your ass down here." Feng Wu's face turned livid. Behind Jun Linyuan, Young Lord Feng and Xianyi exchanged looks and saw resignation in each other's eyes. Boss Jun was hopeless. Unlike the others, the way he courted a girl would actually push the girl further and further away. However, Jun Linyuan couldn't hear Feng Sun and Xianyi's thoughts. At that moment he was very displeased. So many pairs of infatuated eyes were glued to his woman, but she was completely clueless. How could he be happy? Chapter 1044. Bullying is affection. 1044. Bullying is affection. Didn't you hear me? Get the hell off that dais. How long did she plan to stand there and be gawked at for? There was a frown on Jun Linyuan's stunningly handsome face, and he looked displeased. He said, I'll let you off the hook today. Interrupt a class again, and I'll have you kicked out of this college. He trusted that after this, no other boy would dare sit next to her or have a private conversation with her. Feng Wu was so frustrated. He was the one who made her give the lecture, and when everything was going fine, he told her to get her ass down from there. He had threatened her with her classmates' lives before cutting her off. So what if he was the crown prince? Big deal. Feng Wu was furious. Her cheeks flushed and blue veins popped in the corner of her forehead. Given the option, she would throttle Jun Linyuan right now. However, she had neither the capability nor the power. She would find the broken star pieces and cure her beautiful master. No one would pick on her again when her beautiful master was around. At that thought, Feng Wu threw a frustrated glance at Jun Linyuan, then ran out of the classroom. Feng Wu had run away. The other students stared in bewilderment. The crown prince had let Feng Wu run away. She was able to get away after offending His Royal Highness. The crown prince's face couldn't be any darker. His black eyes seemed to be covered with a bloody red mist. Rising to his feet, he stepped out on long legs, and the next second, he was nowhere to be seen. Feng Sun and Xianyi exchanged looks. Now that Boss Jun and Feng Wu were gone, there was no need for them to remain here any longer. Hence they took off as well. They left as fast as they had come, and were out of sight in no time. A hush fell over the classroom. Outside, Feng Wu rushed out in frustration and needed an outlet for her anger. That Jun Linyuan was such a jerk. She would love to see him pull that arrogant stunt again after her beautiful master woke up. Feng Wu was still angrily headed for the school gate when a tall figure suddenly blocked her path. She had been walking with her head down as she complained inwardly about Jun Linyuan and hadn't been paying attention to where she was going. She bumped into the man. The impact made Feng Wu see stars. Cursing under her breath, she thought she had to be having the worst day of her life. Why did she keep bumping into people? However, her face turned livid as soon as she looked up. Jun Lin. Yuan. Feng Wu uttered his name through gritted teeth. Seeing Feng Wu's bruised nose and teary eyes, Jun Linyuan felt himself go soft inside. He raised a hand to touch Feng Wu's nose, but Feng Wu was on the alert and only backed away. She glared at him furiously. Just then, Feng Sun and Xianyi arrived in a hurry. Feng Wu turned her teary eyes on Feng Sun. It pained Feng Sun to see her like that. That was his baby sister, and she looked as pitiful as a puppy dog. He couldn't bear to see her like this. Feng Sun rushed to her in a hurry. Kiddo, what happened? Who did this to you? Feng Wu glanced at Feng Sun with tears welling up in her eyes as she pointed at Jun Linyuan. It's him. Now get revenge for me. Feng Sun rubbed his head with a bitter smile. As her big brother, he would have lunged at the guy who dared to pick on her. However, that guy just happened to be Boss Jun, and he was only bullying her as a way of showing his affection. Come over here. Feng Sun led Feng Wu behind an old tree. He then said in a low voice, My dear sister. Chapter 1045. Jun Linyuan, I hear that you like me. Chapter 1045. Jun Linyuan, I hear that you like me. Feng Wu stared at Feng Sun. If I'm still your sister, beat him up for me. She decided that she would stop reasoning with him and do as she pleased. Feng Sun felt a headache coming on, and he tried to reason with her. Dear sister, it's not what you think. Boss Jun is actually... Feng Wu said. Are you saying that he doesn't pick on me? Feng Sun said. No, he does do that. Feng Wu said. So, your sister gets bullied, and you're going to do nothing? What kind of brother are you? Feng Sun said. You're my dearest sister. But some guys show their affection by picking on the girl they like. You see where I'm going with this? Feng Sun knew that Boss Jun was beyond saving, but he might be able to persuade little Feng Wu. However, Feng Wu almost choked on her own breath after she heard that. Cough cough. She flushed, gasping for air. Sister, are you all right? Feng Sun reached out to hold Feng Wu's hand, but she threw him off. She looked at Feng Sun as if he was an idiot. Are you telling me that your boss Jun likes me? Feng Sun nodded repeatedly. Yes, that's it. As unbelievable as it sounded, he was telling the truth. He had also learned it the hard way. Feng Wu said, You're saying that your boss Jun is bullying me only because he likes me? Feng Sun kept nodding. Yes, that's right. Feng Wu gave him a what an idiot look. Gimme your hand. Was she trying to check her pulse? Did she think he was nuts? Feng Sun didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He knew how unbelievable it sounded, but it didn't make what he said any less true. He tried to convince Feng Wu. Xiao Wu, if you try to understand Boss Jun, you'll see that he actually likes you a lot. Feng Wu snorted. He likes me? He bullies me because he likes me? By abusing me, setting me up, and annoying me? If that's how liking someone works, I'm sorry. That's too much affection for me to take. Feng Wu thought Feng Sun had lost his mind. From Feng Wu's point of view, Jun Linyuan had shown nothing but antagonism and repulsion toward her. He was mean, domineering, and vicious. And Feng Sun called that affection. Feng Sun scratched his head. He knew that Boss Jun had a strange way of courting a girl, but that didn't make what he said any less true. Feng Sun tried to convince Feng Wu, using what Xianyi told him before. However, he had only just started, before Feng Wu pushed him away and ran off. She stood boldly in front of Jun Linyuan, and met his gaze with her bloodshot eyes. She smirked. Jun Linyuan, I heard that you like me. Is that true? She took the initiative. That was so straightforward. Instantly, everything fell into a hush, and it became so quiet that everyone could hear their hearts beating. For a brief moment, Jun Linyuan forgot to breathe. He tensed up and his mind went blank. He didn't know what to do. He could see the taunting and scornful look in Feng Wu's eyes. Did he like her? Jun Linyuan didn't know the answer to that, but he did know that he couldn't admit it even if the answer was yes. The last thing he wanted was to be laughed at by this girl. Raising her chin proudly, Feng Wu sneered at Jun Linyuan. She then glowered. Feng Sun said you like me. Is that true? Feng Sun. Jun Linyuan's pupils contracted, and a dark red mist seemed to blur his vision again. Chapter 1046 Tai Formation. Chapter 1046 Tai Formation. Jun Linyuan's pupils contracted, and a dark red mist seemed to blur his vision. He then turned his sharp gaze on Feng Sun. Poor Feng Sun. The Crown Prince's ferocious glare froze him in place. Staring at Jun Linyuan, Feng Wu pressed. She repeated the question. Is that it? You like me? Both Feng Sun and Xianyi stared at Jun Linyuan unblinkingly. Tell her. Now. Your Royal Highness, she'll never know your feelings if you don't tell her. However, Jun Linyuan had seen the sneer in Feng Wu's eyes, and a guy as proud as he was would never admit the truth. Of course I don't. Don't flatter yourself. The Crown Prince was all about saving face, and he glared at Feng Wu for what she said. Oh God. Exchanging looks, Feng Sun and Xianyi both cried out in their heads. Naturally, Feng Wu flushed again, and she turned to glare at Feng Sun. Is that what you call like me? Feng Sun was rendered speechless. Before he could explain, Feng Wu ran off. Hey! Feng Sun stomped his foot in frustration. Turning around, he wanted to complain to Jun Linyuan, but before he could say anything, Jun Linyuan's intimidating energy had already filled the air. The unbelievable power almost crushed Feng Sun and Xianyi's spines like an enormous mountain. Both of them broke out sweating and felt chills run down their spines. Humph! Jun Linyuan's already dark eyes seemed to turn even darker. They could smell danger in the air, as if a storm was brewing. The Crown Prince flipped his sleeves and stormed off. Xianyi and Feng Sun were left behind, eyeing each other in bewilderment. Both their backs were hunched, as if they had a mountain on their shoulders, for Jun Lingyuan's energy had expanded to fill the entire area. Feng Sun gave Xianyi a pitiful look. Now I know what it's been like for you. Xianyi shrugged. Feng Sun said, why do I feel that we've made it worse? Xianyi shrugged again. Feng Sun said, will the two of them ever stop? They're so unpredictable and they fight non-stop. But in the end, we're the ones who suffer the consequences. Xianyi heaved a sigh. Feng Sun asked, what are we going to do now? Xianyi said, just let it be. Feng Wu headed back home, still angry, and Chaoge caught up to her on the way. Xiao Wu, are you alright? Chaoge was concerned. Feng Wu gritted her teeth. Chaoge looked at her sympathetically. I don't know what it is with His Royal Highness. Why are you the only one he picks on? What are we gonna do? Feng Wu ground her teeth. Chaoge said, we've only been in school for a day. Feng Wu sighed in resignation. Chaoge was right. It was only the first day of school, and she still had 4 more years to go. After she got back home, Feng Wu jumped into Feng Manor right away. Grand Secretary Feng stayed at home most of the time these days, since he could cultivate more efficiently thanks to the Tai formation. You want to withdraw from school? Grand Secretary Feng was teaching Feng Xiaoqi when Feng Wu arrived, and he looked up at her after hearing those words. Feng Wu said, not exactly. I'll be studying on my own outside school, and I'll only show up for the exams. Stroking his beard, Grand Secretary Feng gave it some thought. You're only in year 1, and the formation classes are indeed too easy for you. Try to cultivate in the Tai formation for a few days. Pick the spot you find the most efficient. Feng Wu was elated. Having the principal of Imperial College as a friend sure came in handy. For the next 3 days, Feng Wu stayed in the Tai formation for her cultivation. Chapter 1047, His Royal Highness. Chapter 1047, His Royal Highness. All the time she spent in the Tai formation paid off. After Feng Wu started cultivating, she felt the spiritual energy flow freely into her body, without any hindrance at all. The spiritual essence ran into her body like mischievous fairies. She couldn't stop it even if she wanted to. Feng Wu was a level 6 spiritual grandmaster, and after 3 days, she reached perfection at that level. She was that close to making a breakthrough. But to achieve that required serendipity, and Feng Wu was stuck. The breakthrough just wouldn't happen. Feng Wu stopped cultivating and opened her eyes. Right after that, she met Grand Secretary Feng's knowing eyes, which still had a surprised look in them that he wasn't quick enough to hide. You're about to make a breakthrough again? Grand Secretary Feng looked at Feng Wu in amazement. He had never seen a kid make such swift progress. She had only just leveled up, but she was ready to move on to the next level again. Feng Wu smiled. The Tai formation is as amazing as it's said to be. It only takes me half the time to cultivate. Feng Wu had thought that it would be a while before she reached the spiritual elder stage. As it turned out, she didn't have to wait that long. A spiritual elder? That was what Zhuo Qingwan was now. Just then, there was knocking on the door outside. Feng Wu looked at Grand Secretary Feng in bewilderment. Grand Secretary Feng frowned. It's them again. Them? Feng Wu asked curiously. Grand Secretary Feng frowned a little and didn't reply. Steward Feng answered with a wry smile. Ever since my old master's sensational breakthrough, a lot more people started visiting us. It used to be very quiet here. Feng Wu could see why that was the case. After his retirement, Grand Secretary Feng had had far less visitors. However, now that he had been promoted to principal of Imperial College, and with his capability now on par with Mr. Lu's, it was only natural that more people would start to show up. It was just that Grand Secretary Feng had turned all of them away to have some peace and quiet. Since the Tai formation extended all the way to encompass Fallen Star Yard, Feng Wu could cultivate at home as well. Qiuling, Uncle Qiu, and Chaoge were all absorbing the spiritual essence and working on their cultivation there. Feng Wu came back to Fallen Star Yard to find the place very quiet. Everyone was working hard. As she was free at the moment, which was very rare, Feng Wu sat down under the grape trellis and considered her current situation. Since she had found the first broken star piece, it was time she started looking for the second one. Feng Wu couldn't wait to get all the pieces. But where could the second piece be? Feng Wu had no idea at all. But she faintly recalled that Jun Linyuan had mentioned that it was an imperial college. Feng Wu couldn't sit still anymore. She ran next door to Grand Secretary Feng. Broken star pieces? Grand Secretary Feng frowned. Feng Wu asked, "Have you never heard of them?" Grand Secretary Feng shook his head. "As a matter of fact, I haven't. Are they very important?" Feng Wu seldom looked this serious. "More important than my life." Grand Secretary Feng didn't say anything in reply. It seemed that they were really very important. Maybe the other elders know about it. Hold on. Grand Secretary Feng then contacted the others. Feng Wu waited patiently. Meanwhile, in the Crown Prince's residence, Feng and Granny Gong stood outside the study in utter silence, exchanging not a single word. Granny Gong then heaved a sigh. His Royal Highness has shut himself inside for 2 days. When is he going to break free of this mood? Feng looked up at the sky. Chapter 1048 Broken Star Pieces. Chapter 1048 Broken Star Pieces. Because of the Crown Prince's rage, dark clouds had gathered overhead, covering the entire sky over the residence. Cold air filled the place, and everyone was as silent as cicadas in autumn. It was too scary for them to utter a word. Feng sighed in resignation. Chang San, the captain of the guards in the residence, was standing next to Feng's side at the moment. "Mr. Feng, His Royal Highness has been in a bad mood for 2 days. It's never been this long before." Chang San pulled a long face. He must have reprimanded over 100 officials and generals already. Reprimand was an understatement. To be more precise, he had given them absolute hell. Feng smiled bitterly. It had really been going on for too long. Who offended His Royal Highness this time? Chang San cringed. And when is it going to end? Luckily, His Royal Highness had only lashed out at the civil and military officials and the generals of the Imperial Guards. None of his close subordinates had been affected yet. But who knew what could happen if his mood stayed like this? Just then, "Chang San, get you ass in here." The Crown Prince's grumpy voice came from inside the room. Chang San's eyes widened, and he turned to Feng for help. What should he do now? Feng and Granny Gong looked the other way, as if they hadn't heard a thing. Chang San had to force himself to go in when in fact, he wanted to cry for help. Soon, they hear angry roars from inside. Both Feng and Granny Gong felt their stomachs lurch. Chang San came out about 15 minutes later with blood oozing from his ears, nostrils, and the corner of his mouth. He looked listless. When the captain saw Feng, he almost burst into tears. Who on earth offended His Royal Highness? Chang San hadn't seen that coming, and he was devastated. Who do you think? Feng darted a glance at Chang San. Luckily, Chang San was no fool. He saw the light right away. Do you mean Miss Feng Wu? Feng raised his head, looking like he knew nothing at all. Rolling up his sleeves, Chang San headed for the door. Feng asked, "Where are you going?" Chang San said, "To find him a fire extinguisher." And he didn't go alone. Together with a team of his men, Chang San headed for the Feng Manor. Meanwhile, Feng Wu was waiting for the result of Grand Secretary Feng's inquiry. If Grand Secretary Feng could find a lead on the broken star pieces, she wouldn't have to go to Jun Linyuan anymore. God knew how irritated she was even at just the thought of Jun Linyuan. The anger was simply uncontrollable. How did it go? Feng Wu stared at Grand Secretary Feng nervously. Grand Secretary Feng nodded at her. "I don't have the exact location of the broken star pieces, but I have a lead." Really? Feng Wu's eyes lit up. Something was better than nothing. She could work with that. What lead? Feng Wu stared at Grand Secretary Feng earnestly. Grand Secretary Feng was secretly surprised. He had never seen the girl so devoted to something. He told her, "Xianyuan Kuan is the person you should start working on." As an elder Xianyuan? Feng Wu's eyes flickered. Elder Xianyuan was one of the 7 members of the Education Board, and backing Yu Yu's office. That old man had wanted Feng Wu dead. Grand Secretary Feng recalled the incident as well, and his face darkened. Xianyuan Kuan isn't exactly your friend. Moreover, the Xianyuan clan has close ties with the Zhou clan. By now, Grand Secretary Feng had learned about the enmity between Feng Wu and Zhou Qingwan. He couldn't help but worry about her dealing with the Zhou family. Chapter 1049, Where's Feng Wu? Chapter 1049, Where's Feng Wu? It's better than nothing, Feng Wu said with a brooding look in her eyes. As long as she had something to work with, she would find those broken star pieces, no matter what it took. Back at the Feng Manor. Thump, thump, thump. Someone banged on the gate of the Feng Manor. Ever since Feng Wu's beautiful mother beat the crap out of Feng Yanfeng the other day, the guy had been too humiliated to leave the house. He had stayed at home, claiming to be sick. The day he finally summoned up the courage to go out, the elderly steward came in. He said, "Master, we have trouble." Feng Yanfeng frowned. "Why are you panicking?" The old steward's forehead was covered with sweat. "There are people banging on our door." Banging on their door? Feng Yanfeng was furious. Who did these people think the Feng clan was? Feng Yanfeng rose to his feet. "Who the hell are these people?" The old steward said, "It's General Chang, as in General Chang who works for His Royal Highness. He's kicking the door down." His Royal Highness's General Chang. Next to Feng Yanfeng, Feng Lu and Feng Sang were thrilled to hear the news. So, His Royal Highness was really going to teach Feng Wu a lesson this time. Come, let's have a look. With Feng Lu and Feng Sang running at the front, Feng Yanfeng followed them out with conflicted feelings. No one would dare to ignore those who worked for His Royal Highness. And the Feng Manor's doors weren't going to stop someone like General Chang. By the time Feng Yanfeng and the others rushed out, General Chang was already in the main hall. Feng Yanfeng went up to him in a hurry. "General Chang." Feng Yanfeng was a high-ranking official, but he still didn't dare offend General Chang. With a stern look on his face, Chang San turned his sharp gaze on Feng Yanfeng. He waved at Feng Yanfeng. "Chief Feng, let's cut to the chase. I'm not here for you. Show me to Miss Feng Wu, please." So they really were here for Feng Wu. Judging by his attitude, Feng Yanfeng didn't think General Chang would be too polite to Feng Wu. Before Feng Yanfeng could say anything, Feng Lu stepped out. "I know where Feng Wu lives. I'll show you the way." Chang San turned his sharp gaze on Feng Lu. Soon they arrived at Fallen Star Yard. Feng Wu was at Grand Secretary Feng's place at the moment. Since Grand Secretary Feng was able to extend his spiritual essence quite some distance now, he naturally detected Chang San and his men. "You have visitors in Fallen Star Yard. I think you should go back now," Grand Secretary Feng reminded Feng Wu. Grand Secretary Feng had been telling Feng Wu Elder Xuanyuan's life story. For the better she knew her enemy, the higher her chances of victory. Since Feng Wu wanted to get some leads from Elder Xianyuan, she needed to learn more about him first. But she was interrupted halfway, which meant that she wasn't in a good mood at all. After bidding Grand Secretary Feng farewell, Feng Wu jumped over the wall back into her Fallen Star Yard. By then, everyone in the yard who had been cultivating was roused. Chowga chilling Uncle Chiao. Everyone was frowning and looked displeased. Of course they were unhappy. How else should they react when they were interrupted in the middle of their cultivation? Chowga glared at Feng Lu. Feng Lu smirked. "Duan Chowga, you're not a member of the Feng clan. You have no right to speak." Chowga smirked back. "I'm not a Feng clansman, but I'm a member of Fallen Star Yard, which you're not. You're the one who should shut up." Seeing the displeased look on General Chang's face, Feng Yanfeng snapped. "Shut up, everyone." Instantly, everyone quieted down. General Chang walked in and scanned the yard with a frown. "Where's Miss Wu?" Feng Yanfeng glared at Duan Chowga. "Where's Feng Wu?" Chapter 1050, That Doesn't Seem Right. Chapter 1050, That Doesn't Seem Right. Chowga didn't reply, for she had been cultivating and had no idea where Xiao Wu went. Did Feng Wu get wind of this and go into hiding? Feng Lu snorted. Chowga asked, "Get wind of what?" Why should she hide? Feng Lu said. Duan Chaoga, don't tell me you don't know who this gentleman is. Let me enlighten you. This is General Chang, and he works for His Royal Highness. And now, General Chang is here to arrest Feng Wu. She must have heard of this somehow, and absconded to avoid punishment. I pity you lot here. You know nothing when Feng Wu has abandoned you all. Abscond? Arrest? Those are some bold statements. A calm voice came from inside the house. They looked up to find the slim and graceful teenage girl smiling at them with her arms crossed. Her face glowed like peach blossoms in March, and the careless smile on her face wasn't the expression of one who was going to be arrested at all. She was neither nervous nor did she panic. Feng Lu smirked when she saw Feng Wu. Karma is a bitch, and retribution will come eventually. Feng Wu, your time is up. Is that so? Feng Wu gave her a half-smile. Xiao Wu. The beautiful lady had walked out of the house when no one was looking, and she nervously took Feng Wu's hand. There was panic in her eyes. She was worried about Feng Wu. Feng Wu noticed that her mother's exquisite face was utterly white. She then recalled what happened the other day, and looked pained. She felt sorry for her mother. When the beautiful lady went berserk, she was stunning, spectacular, and unbelievably powerful. However, she had been completely worn out after she fainted, and had only gotten better in the past few days. Feng Wu knew that entering such a berserk state came at a price, and for her mother, that price was her health. Of course, she wouldn't let something like that happen to her mother again. Staring at Chang San, Feng Wu looked displeased and her face darkened. Chang San's stomach lurched. I'm fine. Mum, don't worry. Granny Zhao helped my mother inside. What annoyed Feng Wu was the fact that these people kept coming here uninvited, and started pointing fingers at her right away. How dare they? Feng Lu was still nagging, but Feng Wu ignored her completely. With an emotionless face, Feng Wu went straight to Chang San, and stared at him with her cold eyes. Her thin red lips reminded him of blood. Glaring at General Chang, Feng Wu snorted. Chang San, how dare you break into my fallen star yard? Just arrest her. Feng Sang and Feng Lu looked expectantly at Chang San, hoping to see him act as arrogantly as when he had first arrived. However, to everyone's surprise, Chang San didn't reply. He kept silent. Did Jun Linyuan send you here to arrest me? The thought of Jun Linyuan made Feng Wu want to snap. Feng Yanfeng glowered at Feng Wu, astonished by how bold the girl had become. She had just referred to the crown prince by name. Surely General Chang would punish her for that. However, Chang Sen only said, No, it's not like that. His Royal Highness doesn't know I'm here. Feng Wu asked, Then what are you doing here? To show off how powerful you are? Chang San waved his hands repeatedly. No, of course not. How can someone as petty as me do that in front of you, Miss Wu? It's just a misunderstanding, a big misunderstanding. What? Feng Lu and Feng Sang, who had been excited to see what was going to happen next, exchanged astonished looks. That didn't seem right. General Chang had been so domineering earlier, and hadn't even shown their father much respect. Chapter 1051 Abducted. Chapter 1051 Abducted. However, not only didn't Chang San talk back, he even repeatedly apologized to Feng Wu. What was going on here? Feng Wu stared at Chang San. Then what are you doing here? Recalling the depressing atmosphere in the Crown Prince's residence, Chang San was about to say something, when he turned his head to look at the baffled Feng Lu and her family. Eyes brooding and face emotionless, General Chang asked, Master Feng, isn't there somewhere else you need to be? Feng Yanfeng almost lost his temper at those words. What was that supposed to mean? Where else should he be? This General Chang showed him no respect whatsoever. However, despite his grievance, Feng Yanfeng still smiled obsequiously. Yes, General Chang, I won't bother you anymore. Feng Yanfeng shot Feng Sang and Feng Lu warning glances on his way out. As reluctant as Feng Sang and Feng Lu were, they had no choice but to follow their father out. Feng Wu stared at Chang San. Chang San gave Feng Wu a broad smile as soon as Feng Yanfeng left. Miss Feng Wu, sorry for the intrusion. I didn't mean to offend you. Since Feng Wu despised Junlin Yuan, she wasn't very amiable toward Chang San either. She waved at him impatiently. I don't need your apology. As long as you leave me alone. Please leave. Chang San smiled at Feng Wu, but wouldn't move. Feng Wu glowered. Why are you still here? Chang San said. Miss Wu, please come with me to His Royal Highness's residence. What if I say no? Feng Wu snorted. She wasn't blind. She could tell that Chang San hesitated for a brief moment. Miss Wu, are you really not going? No. Feng Wu snorted. Rising to his feet, Chang San looked at Feng Wu with a stern look on his face. If soft talk wouldn't work, he would have to resort to sheer force. If that's the case, Chang San shot a glance at his men. Instantly, all 4 men dashed toward Feng Wu. Guards of the Crown Prince's residence were all capable men, and these 4 had been chosen from the Imperial Guard. They were spiritual elders. Feng Wu was shocked. Despite their ordinary appearance, every single one of these guards was a spiritual elder. Feng Wu was only a level 6 spiritual grandmaster now, and she was far from their match. She was subdued in no time. Miss Wu, sorry about this. Chang San tossed out an immortal restraining rope. It was just a thin rope, but seemed to be full of spiritual essence. It then wrapped around Feng Wu like a spiritual snake. Instantly, Feng Wu was tied up in a bundle. The 4 guards then held Feng Wu high above their heads. It might sound like it took a long while, but the whole process from the guards charging out to Feng Wu, getting tied up happened in less than a minute. Let's go. With a wave of his hand, Chang San led his men out. Duan Chaoga and the others were furious. However, as soon as they rushed out, General Chang waved his hand. Thump! Duan Chaoga and the others fell back to the ground. Pressing her hand to her chest, Chaoga tried to rush out again, but Feng Wu stopped her. Chaoga, stop. Chang San could be relentless, and Feng Wu didn't want Chaoga to take unnecessary risks. Chang San and his men were efficient. In a matter of moments, they left the Feng manor, jumped onto their horses, and rushed toward the Crown Prince's residence. Feng Yinfeng, Feng Lu, and Feng Sang looked at one another in bewilderment. Seriously, judging by General Chang's attitude, he seemed nice toward Feng Wu. But why had he carried her off all of a sudden? Exactly what does His Royal Highness think of Feng Wu? Feng Yinfeng was dumbfounded. He wouldn't know how to treat Feng Wu unless he knew what the Crown Prince thought of her. Chapter 1052 Junlin Yuan. Chapter 1052 Junlin Yuan. Did he kidnap her to become his concubine? Feng Lu said with flickering eyes as she bit her lower lip. Feng Sang looked at her. Do you mean? Feng Lu's face turned grim. His Royal Highness will never get over what Feng Wu did to him. His only option now is to humiliate Feng Wu and torture her to death. Only then will he be able to vent all his anger. Feng Lu shook her head. I'm afraid. Feng Wu is never coming back. A beauty who had perished. Those words came to their minds right away. Feng Wu didn't know that Feng Lu and the others already saw her as a dead person. Right now she was feeling utterly frustrated. These abominable guards. As if tying her up wasn't enough, they had done so in the fashion of a traditional Chinese rice pudding, and she was carried over someone's shoulder as the guards rode along the streets on horseback. Anyone with eyes saw it. She was so humiliated. Luckily, her face was covered as well, and she hoped no one had eyes sharp enough to recognize her. However, cold air filled her lungs on the ride, and it was awful. Junlin Yuan. Feng Wu blamed Junlin Yuan for everything. When General Chang cheerfully carried the bundled-up Feng Wu to the study, Feng couldn't help but give it a second look. What's that? General Chang couldn't wait to take credit for his achievement. Mr. Feng, didn't you say that it was better for the doer to undo what they did? Here comes the doer. Feng looked astonished. Before he could react, General Chang had marched into the study with Feng Wu the rectangular bundle under his arm. Feng was speechless. He had never looked so anxious before. Granny Gong was equally shocked. The 2 old servants exchanged astonished looks. Then, they involuntarily moved away from the study, until they were 100 meters away. Only then did they turn around, and give Chang-san sympathetic looks. Do you think we'll ever see Chang-san alive again? Even someone as experienced as Granny Gong had a hard time accepting this reality. Feng rubbed his forehead. I think we'll be needing a new chief of the guards. In the study, hearing the noise, Jun Linyuan turned around, and his black pupils contracted. The energy he gave off was frighteningly cold. General Chang tossed Feng Wu on the ground, then saluted the crown prince. Your Royal Highness, I brought you Miss Feng Wu. Please find the enclosed subject. Feng Wu. Jun Linyuan's pupils contracted. The enclosed subject. Under the rope, Feng Wu was astonished. Tied up from head to toe, Feng Wu wriggled violently. One could sense her fury even through the thick rope layers. Dumbfounded, Jun Linyuan was still trying to digest this piece of information. Jun Linyuan, let me out. Feng Wu was so furious that she thought she was going to burn a hole in herself with her fury. Only then did Jun Linyuan finally come back to himself. If the look on his face had been stern before, it had just turned into embarrassment. Jun Linyuan gave General Chang an indecipherable look. Meanwhile, General Chang was very pleased with himself. According to Feng, His Royal Highness was in love with Miss Feng Wu, which was where his bad mood had come from. Now that Chang-san had brought her here, His Royal Highness hadn't gotten angry right away. As for how he had brought her here, why did it matter? The result was the most important thing. Jun Linyuan, Feng Wu bellowed. Chapter 1053. I don't ever want to see you again. Chapter 1053. I don't ever want to see you again. By then, Jun Linyuan had finally come back to himself, and with a flick of his fingers, the immortal restraining rope wrapped around Feng Wu broke into pieces and fell all over the floor. And the color of Feng Wu's face. Her face had already turned a purplish red. Bah! She spat out the rope that had been stuffed into her mouth. After rinsing her mouth, Feng Wu glared at Jun Linyuan with eyes that could spit fire. She then rushed at Jun Linyuan at full speed. Even His Royal Highness couldn't help but cringe when faced with the girl, who resembled a cannonball. Jun Linyuan. Standing in front of him, Feng Wu saw red. Jun Linyuan was speechless. The intimidating, life-threatening air around him had vanished to be replaced by a look of embarrassment. Have I offended you somehow? Why did you have me kidnapped? Jun Linyuan said. Feng Wu pressed forward, and His Royal Highness stumbled back. Feng Wu said, What's your problem? Did you have to see me that desperately? Couldn't you have invited me nicely? Did you have to tie me up in a bundle and carry me all the way here in broad daylight? Do you even care about my dignity? Jun Linyuan said. Watching from the side, General Chang was astonished. Seriously? His young master, the domineering, arrogant and relentless crown prince, was losing ground to Feng Wu. Moreover, his eyes couldn't stop darting around diffidently when faced with Feng Wu's questioning, and he wouldn't meet her eyes. He was intimidated. The crown prince that would eliminate anyone who stood up to him wasn't supposed to give in to anyone. General Chang thought the world had gone insane. No, he himself had gone insane. Although Feng had reminded him that His Royal Highness was fond of Miss Feng Wu, Chang-san had always thought it was no more than a fling. Oh God! Recalling how rude he had been when he invited Feng Wu here, Chang-san felt a chill run down his spine. He turned to flee the scene. However, as soon as he moved, Jun Linyuan turned his intense gaze on him. Stop! The crown prince's stare was emotionless and as sharp as a blade. Your Royal Highness! Realizing that his conduct wouldn't go unpunished, Chang-san got down on his knees. Who told you to bring her here? Jun Linyuan gave off a frighteningly cold air. So, Jun Linyuan hadn't known about this, and Feng Wu had misunderstood him? Feng Wu turned to stare at Chang-san. Chang-san pleaded for mercy. Your Royal Highness, I thought you wanted to see Miss Feng Wu, so I took the liberty to invite her here. When did I say I wanted to see her? Angry and embarrassed, the crown prince raised a foot toward Chang-san. Poor Chang-san. He was kicked away immediately. He flew out of the room and disappeared from sight. Jun Linyuan turned his black eyes on Feng Wu. Did you see that? Feng Wu snorted. Even if it wasn't your doing, it doesn't change the fact that he works for you. Jun Linyuan, you can't shirk responsibility like that. Jun Linyuan asked. What do you want me to do then? Feng Wu heaved a sigh. What an undeserved catastrophe. She had done nothing but mind her own business. Crossing her arms behind her back, Feng Wu said, I don't want anything. I just don't want to ever see you again. She had learned that she could find leads on the second broken star piece from old Xianyuan, so she didn't need anything from Jun Linyuan anymore. At that thought, Feng Wu snorted and promptly turned to leave. However, she didn't notice that at her words, the Crown Prince's face had turned livid right away. Chapter 1054. Hey Jun Linyuan. Stay away from me. Chapter 1054. Hey Jun Linyuan. Stay away from me. Do you think you can come and go just like that? There was a cold look in Jun Linyuan's eyes all of a sudden, and he swept his wide sleeve through the air. Thump. A white ice wall fell down from above, blocking Feng Wu's way. Caught by surprise, Feng Wu almost bumped into it. Damn it! Feng Wu knitted her pretty eyebrows. Right now, she had already left the study and was in the open courtyard. If one direction was blocked, she could always choose another one. Instead of going forward, Feng Wu turned west. She decided to jump over the wall. However, she was only able to take a few steps after she had to change direction. Thump! Another ice wall fell down and blocked Feng Wu's way. Feng Wu's nose almost knocked into it. Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu was furious. How could he do that? Resting his hands behind his back, Jun Linyuan stood proudly in the courtyard, the lower hem of his clothes flapping in the air. His white clothes were a stark contrast to the red in his eyes, which flickered with an intimidating light in them. His clothes floated airily above the ground and fluttered with the wind. He stood there with his hands tucked in his wide sleeves. Here in this empire, he could take a person out with a flick of his wrist, eliminating anyone that got in his way. He wielded the ultimate power, and everyone treated him with utmost respect. But now, Feng Wu charged at Jun Linyuan, stomping all the way and glared at him. Jun Linyuan, what the hell do you want? Jun Linyuan stared at Feng Wu without saying a word. Feng Wu said, Since you didn't invite me here, I can go if I want to, right? Jun Linyuan nodded. Feng Wu turned east, but... Thump! Another ice wall fell from above, almost smashing into Feng Wu. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. This was outrageous. Even with her mild temper, she couldn't hold back her fury any longer. 4 of the 3 directions in this spacious courtyard were blocked by ice walls. She was essentially enclosed in an open-ended ice cube that was 3 by 3 meters in size. There was even a ceiling, which made it impossible for Feng Wu to jump out. Her only way out was through Jun Linyuan. Feng Wu sensed something dangerous in Jun Linyuan's eyes, and she was alarmed. No, she couldn't stay here anymore. Look, what's that? Feng Wu pointed at the sky. When Jun Linyuan looked up, Feng Wu used all her strength and rushed toward him, trying to slip past him. That was how she had gotten away last time. But today... Thump! Feng Wu felt as if she had bumped into a chest made of stone. She could see stars, and felt giddy and dazzled. Despite the pain, Feng Wu looked up with teary eyes to meet Jun Linyuan's brooding black ones. There was no warmth in them. He reminded her of death itself, and the pressure he was giving off was enough to give anyone the creeps. Feng Wu stumbled back involuntarily. However, the domineering crown prince pressed closer. Thump! The last ice wall fell down, cutting off Feng Wu's last escape route. Hey Jun Linyuan! Stay away from me! The look in Jun Linyuan's eyes was so frightening that they seemed to be covered in a dark red color. He kept his unblinking gaze on her. It was as if she was prey, and he was the patient hunter. Feng Wu kept backing away, and His Royal Highness kept closing in on her. Because they were in the courtyard, all eyes in the residence turned in their direction. The white walls had created an enclosure in the yard, but they couldn't shut out the voices inside. Everyone was able to hear what they were saying. Chapter 1055. What are your terms, Jun Linyuan? Chapter 1055. What are your terms, Jun Linyuan? Although no one dared to go and see what was happening, it was human nature to be inquisitive. Even Feng and Granny Gong couldn't help but strain their necks and prick up their ears. Granny Gong asked, "Did His Royal Highness come back to his senses all of a sudden?" Feng wasn't as optimistic. "I don't think so." Granny Gong looked up at the sky. "Speaking of which, as soon as Miss Feng Wu got here, the clouds over our house automatically disappeared." The Crown Prince himself was the core of the formation set up in his residence. When he was in a grim mood, the sky above the house would be just as dark. Feng looked at Chang San, who had fallen out of the sky and was spitting up blood a few steps away, and shook his head. "Get Gu air from the Imperial Guards here." Inside the enclosed ice walls, Feng Wu stared at Jun Linyuan, with a flustered look on her face. What do you want?" The look on the Crown Prince's face was grim. "What do you think?" As he spoke, Jun Linyuan put his slender hands on Feng Wu's shoulders and gave her a half-smile. "Since you're already here, if I don't do something to you now, Chang San's death would be for nothing, wouldn't it?" Jun Linyuan had leaned in so close that Feng Wu could feel his hot breath on her skin. Feng Wu was rarely terrified, but she could detect arousal in Jun Linyuan's eyes, which were so close. Her stomach lurched. This wasn't good. Did he want to right here in the courtyard? She was in his territory, and he was much too prominent and powerful for her to handle. Although she was making unbelievable progress, she was but an ant in Jun Linyuan's eyes. Jun Linyuan's fingers were already touching the front of Feng Wu's clothes, and she could sense the heat in his hands. Her heart was pounding. "Wait, what did he say? Chang San's death. Are you going to kill Chang San?" Grabbing Jun Linyuan's advancing hands, Feng Wu opened her eyes wide. Jun Linyuan smirked. He disobeyed his master and made an arbitrary decision. What other punishment does he deserve? Feng Wu had struggled throughout her life, but she respected lives and didn't trample on them. But now, she could see that other people were merely ants in Jun Linyuan's eyes. She had doubted before when other people called him cold and merciless, but she understood now. Feng Wu glared at Jun Linyuan. "What if I tell you that I won't let that happen?" Jun Linyuan sneered at Feng Wu. Feng Wu's head spun with thoughts. From the way Jun Linyuan put it, Chang San wouldn't be in his service anymore, and had to die. However, despite the rude way Chang San had brought her here, Feng Wu didn't think that was worth the death penalty. "No one will employ him after I fire him." Jun Linyuan sneered. "I will. How about you give him to me?" The more Feng Wu thought about it, the more excited she became. What was the one thing she lacked? Power. She needed the extra manpower to protect her family and Fallen Star Yard. As the chief of Jun Linyuan's guards, Chang San would be perfect for the job. The Zhua family still wanted to kill her, and with Chang San's protection, Feng Wu was so thrilled that she grabbed Jun Linyuan's hands and looked at him with bright, sparkling eyes. "Give Chang San to me. Jun Linyuan, make an offer. Anything." Feng Wu patted her chest, looking all confident. Feng could hear Feng Wu's voice too. Granny Gong praised Feng Wu. "Our future lady of the house is merciful and knows right from wrong. I like that." Feng darted a look at Granny Gong. Even someone as smart as Granny Gong had missed it. This had been a trap set by His Royal Highness, and everything was going to plan. Chapter 1056. Jun Linyuan the Fox. Chapter 1056. Jun Linyuan the Fox. That was unexpected. Their Crown Prince seemed to be able to think straight again, now that little Feng Wu was around. Making Chang San little Feng Wu's official guard was the same as announcing the special relationship between Feng Wu and the Crown Prince. By using Chang San, Feng Wu would be subtly taking advantage of Jun Linyuan's reputation. However, that was a favor that would need to be paid back. Feng stroked his beard. This was fun. Meanwhile, in that closed-off area, Feng Wu was looking expectantly at Jun Linyuan with bright eyes. "Say yes, please? Please." She involuntarily raised her tone toward the end, and Jun Linyuan felt as if a feather was brushing against his heart and tickling him. Jun Linyuan raised his chin proudly. Give him to you? Well, that's doable. What are you going to trade him for? Feng Wu asked. Well, what do you what? Jun Linyuan looked as proud as ever. I can get whatever I want myself. Feng Wu rubbed her chin. How about say I owe you one? Sounds good? I can make very quick progress, and a favor from me will be worth a lot one day. Jun Linyuan only smiled without saying a word. Feng Wu tugged at his sleeve. You're going to kill Chang San anyway. How much more do you want from a man doomed to die? Jun Linyuan, just say yes please. Pretty please. Feng Wu had no idea how attractive she looked to the crown prince when she tugged at his sleeve and pleaded. Fine. Jun Linyuan waved her off. Take him. Although, he'll have nothing to do with this residence from now on. Of course. I wouldn't want it any other way. Feng Wu smiled in satisfaction. She hadn't expected to be able to recruit such impressive help when she woke up that morning. Feng Wu was thrilled. Meanwhile, Chang San had crawled to Feng's feet and was pleading with the latter to save him. Feng shook his head. You can get away with offending other people, but death is what you get for offending Miss Feng Wu. Only then did Chang San realize how important Miss Feng Wu was to His Royal Highness. The closed-off area opened up, and Feng Wu came out looking satisfied. She smiled at Chang San. Chang San had heard the entire conversation inside. Right now, his choice was to die if he didn't go with Feng Wu, or go with Feng Wu and live. Are you coming with me or not? Narrowing her eyes, Feng Wu stared at Chang San with eyes as sharp as a blade. Chang San looked up at Jun Linyuan, who looked as domineering as ever. Kneeling down in front of Feng Wu, Chang San stuck a hand into his own chest. Blood splashed everywhere. Feng Wu's pupils contracted. Jun Linyuan said indifferently, That's a blood oath. He has pledged his loyalty to you, and will be struck by lightning if he defies you. Feng Wu didn't know that one could do that, but she felt much more reassured this way. Activating her green light, she cured Chang San's wound in 5 minutes. After everything was sorted out, Feng Wu proposed to take Chang San back. Jun Linyuan didn't stop her this time, and let her leave. Watching Feng Wu leave, the crown prince had a gleam in his eyes. Feng and Granny Gong exchanged looks. It was starting. God knew what the crown prince had read during the 3 days he shut himself inside, or what he had come up with. He now really looked like a hunter. Looking at Feng Wu from behind, Feng rubbed his chin and shook his head with a wry smile. It seemed that Miss Feng Wu had walked into the trap. Feng Wu knew that bringing Chang San back home would create unnecessary trouble, but she also knew that Chang San's presence would eliminate a lot of trouble for her as well, such as trouble from the Feng clan. Chapter 1057, Feng Wu's back. Chapter 1057, Feng Wu's back. Feng Wu went back to the Feng clan. Meanwhile, in the Feng manor, because Feng Wu had been carried off, nearly everyone in the Feng clan thought that Feng Wu was doomed. Especially Feng Sang and Feng Lu. They were doing their best to spread the rumor. Feng Wu was taken away by the crown prince's residence. Feng Wu is so dead. She's never going to get out of there alive. Feng Yinfeng had a grim look on his face, and one couldn't tell if he was pleased or not. He felt conflicted. His current job position had been obtained through Feng Wu, and if she was dead, she wouldn't be able to help him anymore. And she had offended His Royal Highness. With Feng Wu dead, we won't have to see that eyesore pop up everywhere. Lady Wang was thrilled, and she said to Feng Yinfeng, Master, don't you think that our branch of the family has had bad luck ever since Feng Wu came back to the imperial capital from the northern border? Feng Yinfeng gave it some thought, and realized that that was indeed the case. From Feng Lu and Feng Sang to his wife and himself. If I'm guessing correctly, Feng Wu has to be behind all this. Lady Wang snorted. Feng Lu and the others nodded. Now that Feng Wu has been carried off, there's no doubt that she'll die a miserable death. We have to make sure that His Royal Highness doesn't turn his anger on us. Lady Wang looked eagerly at Feng Yinfeng. Master, I have a suggestion, but I'm not sure if it's appropriate. Feng Yinfeng glanced at his wife. With everything that has happened, propriety is the last thing I'm concerned about. Speak. How about we remove Feng Wu's name from our clan tree, said Lady Wang slowly. Remove her name? Lady Wang went on. Master, it's His Royal Highness that Feng Wu offended. If the Crown Prince lashes out at us, this clan has already weakened, and we can't afford more accidents. Feng Yinfeng gritted his teeth. Seeing that Feng Yinfeng was relenting, Lady Wang shot a glance at her children. Lady Wang was so worried. 5 years ago, when Zhuo Qingwan did that thing to Feng Wu, Lady Wang and her children had all been part of the scheme. One could say that they were part of the reason that Feng Wu was crippled. That was why Lady Wang blanched when she learned that Feng Wu had gotten her ability back. She had been on edge ever since, and didn't dare leave the house. Father, please remove Feng Wu's family from this clan. They'll only incriminate us. Father, Feng Wu is never coming back. And in her family, her mother could potentially be trouble. We have to get rid of her. Lady Wang's eyes lit up. Who knows when she'll go wild again? Master, when she's in that state, she's so strong that even you. Feng Yinfeng was reminded of how Lady Xuanji had thrown him around, and his face turned scarlet red. He smacked the table. All eyes were on him. All right, there was a malicious look in Feng Yinfeng's eyes. Just to be safe, let's wait until we receive news from the Crown Prince's residence. Feng Wu was like a cat with 9 lives. She just wouldn't die. Every time they thought she was dead, she would show up unexpectedly. That was why Feng Yinfeng decided to be more cautious. I'll send someone to ask around. Feng Yiran turned to leave. Just then, hasty footsteps came from outside. It was the steward of the house. Master, I've got great news. Great news. The steward ran as fast as his doddering legs would let him. Feng Yinfeng and his family all rose to their feet. What news? Had Feng Wu been executed? The steward's forehead was covered with sweat, and he smiled as he gasped for breath. Miss Wu is back. And not only that, she's... Chapter 1058. He asked the captain of the guard of Fallen Star Yard. Chapter 1058. He asked the captain of the guard of Fallen Star Yard. Feng Wu was back. Hearing the steward's words, Feng Yinfeng and his family were dumbfounded. They had decided to find a way to remove Feng Wu's branch of the family from the Feng clan, after His Royal Highness killed Feng Wu. Moreover, Feng Yinfeng even had some unspeakable plan for Lady Xuanji. But now, Feng Wu was back. Feng Yinfeng and his family were all astonished. However, when Feng Wu went up to them, they were even more surprised when they saw the person following her. General Chang. Everyone stared at the person in disbelief. Only 2 hours ago, the general had charged in with a team of guards from the Crown Prince's manor, looking almighty and awe-inspiring. But now, Xiao Wu, you're back. Something clicked in Feng Yinfeng's head, and he changed his attitude right away, greeting her with a surprised smile on his face. Feng Wu nodded and looked at the family suspiciously. It was rather rare to see this branch of the family all gathered together. What evil plan had they come up with this time? Uncle, where are you going? Judging by the direction in which they were headed, Feng Wu saw that they were going to Fallen Star Yard. Of course Feng Yinfeng didn't dare tell Feng Wu the truth. Moreover, General Chang was here, and it was only natural that Feng Yinfeng greeted him first. General Chang, I apologize for not greeting you at the front gate. I hope you're not offended. Feng Yinfeng smiled obsequiously. Meanwhile, General Chang was conflicted. Only 2 hours ago, he was still General Chang of the Crown Prince's residence, who answered to only one person. Even all the civil and military officials had to greet him respectfully. But now, his master had changed to the unwanted 5th daughter of the Feng clan. The fallen status was too huge for him to accept just yet. General Chang threw a dirty look at Feng Yinfeng. Master Feng, are you mocking me? Mocking? Where did that come from? Feng Yinfeng's eyes widened. He was so confused. General Chang looked away. Feng Wu glanced at General Chang. It seemed that Chang-san wasn't reconciled to Jun Lingyuan's decision to make him work for her. But he had no choice. He had to go with Feng Wu. Feng Wu didn't mind. She had all the time in the world, and she knew it was only a matter of time before she convinced Chang San. Feng Wu grinned. Uncle, he's not General Chang anymore. Addressing him that way is mocking him. He's not General Chang anymore, so? Feng Yanfeng was utterly surprised. Right now he's Chang San, the captain of the guard of my fallen star yard, said Feng Wu with a smile. Bullshit. Feng Lu stared at Feng Wu. General Chang is the captain of His Royal Highness's guards. He can't be working for you. That's preposterous. What if it's real? Feng Wu smiled at Feng Lu. She didn't mind playing Feng Lu a little. Feng Lu wanted to say something, but Feng Yiran tugged at her to stop. Not everyone in this branch of the family was a fool. Feng Yiran saw that General Chang kept silent after everything Feng Wu said, and his stomach lurched. Feng Yiran said, "Is General Chang really your guard now?" Feng Wu glanced at him. "What do you think?" Feng Yiran frowned. "How?" Feng Wu replied. "His Royal Highness gave him to me." After that, Feng Wu turned to Chang San. "From now on, you're only responsible for the safety of Fallen Star Yard. You don't need to take orders from anyone else in this clan." Chapter 1059 Unbelievable. Chapter 1059 Unbelievable. Chang San was frustrated and had an indecipherable look on his face, but he still gave Feng Wu a nod. So it was true. After Feng Wu led Chang San away, Feng Yanfeng and his family looked at one another in shock for a long time. How is that possible? This can't be happening. Feng Lu was the first to cry out. He's General Chang, His Royal Highness's greatest right-hand man. Why would His Royal Highness give him away just like that? They were still in too great a shock to recover any time soon. Sister, didn't you say that His Royal Highness was horrible to Feng Wu in Imperial College? You said he bullied her and humiliated her, right? Feng Lu stared at Feng Sang. Feng Sang nodded. It's true. Many of my classmates can attest to it. Then why did His Royal Highness have General Chang come back with Feng Wu? Feng Lu couldn't understand it. Is it possible that His Royal Highness sent General Chang here to monitor her? Feng Lu's eyes lit up. She refused to believe that His Royal Highness was into Feng Wu. Feng Sang shook her head. With His Royal Highness's power, he doesn't need to monitor her. He can just kill her. Then why? No one could figure it out, and they had distressed faces. Feng Yanfeng looked around with an authoritative expression on his face, and he said with a snort, "Not a word about what we discussed before. Do you hear me?" Before, they had been trying to figure out a way to remove Feng Wu's family from the clan. But now, she had just brought General Chang back as the captain of her guard. What could they do now? Feng Yiran and the others didn't like it, but they had no choice but to accept this depressing fact. Anyway, there has to be something behind it. Feng Lu clenched her fists. In the Feng clan, people could tell how things were changing around the house. That was why a lot of the servants began to talk. Have you noticed? Miss Wu is getting very self-important these days. You don't say. That was the captain of His Royal Highness's guards, and she brought him back. Do you think Miss Wu and His Royal Highness? Don't say stupid things. In any case, whether they are in a relationship or not, we can all see that the head of the clan treats Miss Wu with respect now. Do you remember? When the second branch of the family came back from northern border city 6 months ago, all they had was a single carriage. Lady Wang could crush them at any moment. But now, Lady Wang doesn't even dare sneer at Feng Wu. I heard from some old members of the clan that the position of clan head should have belonged to Feng Wu's family. Feng Wu had no idea of the servants' reactions, but even if she did, she probably wouldn't care. Fallen Star Yard. After Feng Wu was carried off, her family panicked. Chaoga ran next door to ask Grand Secretary Feng for help. However, Grand Secretary Feng only smiled mildly. Don't worry. The girl will be back in no time. Given how wise Grand Secretary Feng was, he was able to reach this conclusion based on what he knew. He realized that the Crown Prince treated Feng Wu differently. Jun Lingyuan was an extremely rare genius, and Grand Secretary Feng saw great potential in him. He would love to see the Crown Prince become a couple with Feng Wu. But Grand Secretary Feng also realized that Chaoga knew nothing about it. She was furious when Grand Secretary Feng refused to help, and decided to go to the Crown Prince's residence to help Feng Wu. Before she could leave the house, Feng Wu came swaggering in. "Xiao Wu, you're back." Chaoga threw herself at Feng Wu as soon as she saw the latter, and wouldn't let go of Feng Wu's waist. Chapter 1060 Secret of Fallen Star Yard. Chapter 1060 Secret of Fallen Star Yard. The other members of Fallen Star Yard were beyond joyful. Chaoga looked past Feng Wu and saw Chang San behind her. She flared up right away and glared at him. "How dare you show up here? You kidnapped a civilian, do you realize that? Even if you work for His Royal Highness, you can't." Fearing that Chaoga might say something worse, Feng Wu stopped her. "He doesn't work for Jun Linyuan anymore." "Huh?" Chaoga looked at Feng Wu in bewilderment. Feng Wu nodded earnestly. "He's the captain of the guard of Fallen Star Yard now, not Jun Linyuan's General Chang." "What?" Those words shocked everyone in Fallen Star Yard. Granny Zhao took Feng Wu's hand. "Miss, you can't make up a thing like that." When General Chang came here before, it was clear to them that even Feng Yinfeng fawned on him. But now, according to Feng Wu, instead of answering their questions, Feng Wu turned to Chang San with a stern look on her face. "Chang San, from now on, you're in charge of the security of Fallen Star Yard. Problem?" Chang San stared at Feng Wu with a conflicted look in his eyes. If he had a choice, he would say no, but he recalled what Feng had said before he left. "Working for Miss Feng Wu will be a great opportunity for you. Just go." A great opportunity? Looking around the narrow courtyard, Chang San couldn't tell where that great opportunity was, but because of the blood oath he took, Chang San had no choice but to nod. Yes. Everyone stared at Chang San in disbelief. They then turned to stare at Feng Wu. Feng Wu gave them a slight nod. "Chang San will be living here in Fallen Star Yard from now on. Granny Zhao, clean out an empty room for him." Granny Zhao said, "Yes, Mississippi. Uncle Chio, tell him about the do's and don'ts of Fallen Star Yard." Feng Wu gave the instruction. Uncle Chio was speechless. Uncle Chio had only just made it to the spiritual grandmaster stage, but General Chang, his spiritual essence was as profound as the vast bottomless ocean. Uncle Chio smiled wryly. "Yes." Feng Wu treated Chang San the same way she treated the other members of Fallen Star Yard, but the others didn't dare treat Chang San as casually. After all, Chang San was a frighteningly capable man, both in status and ability. Seeing this, Feng Wu could only shake her head with a wry smile, and hope that the others would get used to it soon. That night, the members of Fallen Star Yard were busy cultivating. Feng Wu was in her room, trying to make a breakthrough to level 7 of the spiritual grandmaster stage. Feng Xiaoqi, Qiuling, and Uncle Chio all sat in their respective rooms, absorbing the essence of moonlight and refining the spiritual essence which their bodies required. They had been making quick progress since receiving manuals from Feng Wu. With the help of the Tai formation, their cultivation had become more efficient. This was especially the case for Qiuling. Her capability had increased significantly after Feng Wu changed her physical endowment. Chang San scanned Fallen Star Yard with his spiritual essence. All of a sudden, he felt a sting on his forehead, and he cried out inwardly at the pain. Wait, his spiritual essence didn't work? He only saw a sea of blackness when he scanned Fallen Star Yard. That shouldn't be the case. Chang San extended his spiritual essence outside Fallen Star Yard toward the rest of the Feng Manor. It even reached as far as the courtyard of Feng Yinfeng's family. With his spiritual essence, he could see Feng Yinfeng and Lady Wang having a quarrel. Lady Wang even ended up being slapped by Feng Yinfeng. So, Chang San knew that there was nothing wrong with his spiritual essence. But why couldn't he see anything in Fallen Star Yard? There was something strange about Fallen Star Yard. It hadn't crossed Chang San's mind earlier, but now that he had the time, he began to notice things. Chapter 1061. Assassination After Dark. Chapter 1061 Assassination After Dark. Although he couldn't see anything with his spiritual essence, he could still hear the sound of rhythmic breathing in the rooms next door. Changsan smirked. The people in this courtyard were no more capable than ants. What good would their efforts do? Sitting cross-legged, Changsan started cultivating himself. All of a sudden, his eyes lit up. The spiritual essence was so dense. When he opened up his dantian to absorb the spiritual essence, he realized that the spiritual essence here was as dense as that of the Crown Prince's residence, if not better. What on earth was going on here? Changsan thought that it was an illusion, but soon saw that it wasn't. Not only was the spiritual essence dense, it was pure as well. Rumble. He then heard the faint crackling sound of spiritual essence. Had someone made a breakthrough? What a coincidence. Changsan was thinking this to himself when he heard another faint sound of the fluctuation of spiritual essence. If the first time was a coincidence, what about the next? Could that be a coincidence too? To Changsan's surprise, there was a third sound. He was lost for words. Even if they were all low-level cultivators, this was still way too fast. Were the people in this courtyard even human? Since Changsan couldn't figure it out, he decided to stop thinking. He was going to try it himself. He closed his eyes, opened up his dantian, and entered the cultivation state. Soon, he felt the pure, dense spiritual essence flooding in. Changsan couldn't believe it. He thought he was starting to understand what Feng meant by this great opportunity. He couldn't get enough of the spiritual essence of Fallen Star Yard. This had to be an essence-gathering formation. Changsan was right. The Tai formation wasn't just a defensive formation. More importantly, it could gather spiritual essence for its hosts to use. Changsan had an inkling that if he went on cultivating here, he might be able to break through that bottleneck that had been holding him back. This was such a wonderful cultivation spot. One couldn't find a better one in the entire imperial capital. Changsan could hardly contain his excitement. Just as he suppressed his excitement and was ready to put his mind to his cultivation, all of a sudden, he sensed something aggressive in the air. Interrupted, Changsan opened his eyes and looked displeased. 3 ghost-like shadows jumped over the wall and charged in like shooting stars. They were fast. Judging by their speed as they ran along the walls and roofs, Changsan was sure that these 3 people had reached perfection in the spiritual elder stage at the very least. Feng Wu was only a spiritual grandmaster at the moment, and even one of these individuals would be enough to overpower her, let alone 3. Feng Wu was cultivating with her eyes closed when she heard Little Phoenix's shrill voice in her ear. "We have company." Feng Wu's eyes snapped open and shone coldly in the dark. Little Phoenix was right. They were under attack. Rising to her feet, Feng Wu moved as fast as a streak of lightning. She hid herself in a dark corner before taking out a handful of golden needles. The 3 figures were tall, short, and fat respectively, and had quite distinctive features. They ran in 2 directions as fast as they could. They headed for Feng Wu's and Lady Xuanji's rooms. 2 went for Feng Wu, and 1 ran toward Lady Xuanji's room. Feng Wu's eyes glinted coldly. As if targeting her wasn't enough, they were going to attack her mother, too. That was more than Feng Wu could bear. When the short and the fat men reached Feng Wu's door, Feng Wu gripped her golden needles more tightly. At the same time, she quietly took a dagger out of her sleeve. Chapter 1062, What's going on? Chapter 1062, What's going on? Crack. In the dark, the short man in black gripped the door lock. The next second, the lock gave with a little click. As soon as the door opened, Feng Wu threw out her golden needles. A cold gust of wind swept through the room. The short man crouched down instantly and swiftly dodged the needles. But Feng Wu hadn't been trying to inflict injury with the needles, and instead was forcing him to move as she wanted. Just as the short man dropped onto his stomach and secretly rejoiced at dodging the needles, he realized that his hands seemed stuck to the ground, making it difficult for him to pull them back. But it was only difficult, not impossible. Having reached perfection at the spiritual elder stage, the fat man wasn't going to be defeated that easily. He used all his strength to pull his hands back, and struck out in the direction that the needles had come from. But Feng Wu was nowhere to be found. She had moved away already, and there was a black rebounding wall where she had been standing. As the name suggested, that wall caused spiritual essence to rebound. Therefore, all the power that the short man had exerted was bounced back at equal force. Boom! The formidable spiritual essence rushed toward him at an unbelievable speed. Thump! The short man opened his eyes wide. How could this be? However, his instincts as a killer made him react quickly. There was something strange about this room. After his own spiritual essence bounced back, the short man ran toward the courtyard as fast as he could. Even so, he wasn't able to completely dodge the rebound. The short assassin grunted. He had clearly been injured. Beside him, the fat man was surprised to see what happened to his short colleague. How? As soon as the fat man opened his mouth, the short man glared at him. We've got a tough one. Help me out here. The short man had thought the task was too simple at first, and had told the fat man to stand by and just watch. Hence, the fat assassin had leaned on the doorframe to watch the supposed slaughter with a smile. But to his surprise, the slaughter never happened. Instead, the short man had been forced out of the room. A tough one. That did seem to be the case. The fat man smirked and suddenly drew out his sword. However, the door stayed open, and nothing moved inside. The short man and the fat man exchanged looks and saw surprise in each other's eyes. What was wrong with this courtyard? With everything that had happened, how could the people inside remain motionless like this, as if they were all dead? Under normal circumstances, shouldn't they be screaming? But no. The entire courtyard remained utterly quiet. Something wasn't right. The two men exchanged concerned looks. Wait, where was the tall man? He hadn't come out after going into the other room. Nor was there any sound. It was frighteningly quiet. The two men exchanged looks. Just then, the tall man that had rushed into Lady Xuanji's room suddenly let out an ear-splitting scream. Ah! In the silent night, that scream sent chills down their spines. What happened? Without thinking, the two assassins rushed into Feng Wu's room at top speed. Chapter 1063, Mighty General Chang. Chapter 1063, Mighty General Chang. Their mission was to eliminate Feng Wu, while kidnapping Lady Xuanji was only their secondary goal. Seeing that the situation had changed, they decided to kill Feng Wu as quickly as possible and bring her head back to claim their reward. However, before they could rush in, they saw a teenage girl dressed in red standing under the cherry blossom tree in the courtyard. Her floaty dress fluttered in the wind. It wasn't cherry blossom season yet, but to their surprise, the flowers were in full bloom, and the falling petals danced in the moonlight. Feng Wu, the short assassin, had a cold, murderous look in his eyes. The mission came with a letter of appointment, and Feng Wu's portrait had been in it. Feng Wu wasn't standing there by herself. Next to her was Chang San, who had a cold look in his eyes. He was about to move when Feng Wu stopped him. She gave him a sideway glance. I need to train. Chang San was noticeably losing his patience, for he had had a moment of epiphany during his cultivation just then, and he was eager to put it into use and make some progress in his cultivation. Hence, Chang San stared at the shorty and the fatty with an aggressive look in his eyes. They're merely a pair of useless spiritual elders. Do whatever you want with them. With those words, Chang San held his sword between his crossed arms and leaned against the cherry blossom tree. Useless spiritual elders? The corner of Feng Wu's lips twitched. The captain of Jun Lingyuan's guards was probably the only one that could make that statement. Feng Wu was a spiritual grandmaster herself. In any other situation, she wouldn't even try to fight a spiritual elder, and would take off right away. But it was different today. They were on her territory. With her Tai formation and the fact that Chang San was guarding her on the side, Feng Wu decided to practice her skills. The two assassins sneered at Feng Wu's words. You brat! How bold of you! It's time for you to surrender. Feng Wu shook her head. I want to have a match. The shorty said. Where do you think you are? A martial arts arena? Kiddo, we're assassins. Get it? This was the first time that the two assassins had run into a mere spiritual grandmaster, who wasn't afraid of them, two spiritual elders. Their cultivation levels were an entire stage apart, and the difference between their capabilities was too great to overlook. A further delay will only mean more complications. Let's do this together. The two assassins exchanged looks, and the next second, they charged at Feng Wu together. Their client had put a very high price on Feng Wu's head. Once they accomplished this mission, they would be able to live comfortably, without needing to work for the next 3 years. Seeing the two blades come at her, Feng Wu had an expectant smile on her face. She needed to practice her sword stances, the ones known as Fallen Star swordplay, which her master taught her the other day. However, Feng Wu wouldn't be able to take the two of them together, so she grinned at Chang San. Taking Feng Wu's hint, Chang San rolled his eyes in resignation, and the next second, he raised his hand slightly. Whoosh! In a split second, only one of the two assassins was still facing Feng Wu, for Chang San was holding the other one. Thud! Twisting the fatty's wrist, so that the sword was aimed at the man's own belly, Chang San then impaled the fatty to the tree with it. The fatty looked completely baffled. This wasn't supposed to happen. Didn't the info say that Feng Wu, a level 4 spiritual grandmaster, was the most capable cultivator in Fallen Star Yard? The rest of the members were supposed to be petty level 3 and level 1 spiritual grandmasters, as well as a level 6 spiritual master. But why was this man here? He was far beyond a spiritual elder. Chang San used to be the captain of the Crown Prince's guards, so of course he was a very capable cultivator. Chapter 1064. Since you already here, you may as well fight me. Chapter 1064. Since you already here, you may as well fight me. Chang San stared at the fatty with a ferocious look in his eyes, and was about to snap the latter's neck. However, Feng Wu stopped him. Hold it. Chang San glanced at Feng Wu in resignation. He realized that his new master had a very different style from His Royal Highness. If it were up to His Royal Highness, these assassins would be annihilated with a snap of his fingers. He would never bother to talk to them. However, Chang San had made a blood oath to give his allegiance to Feng Wu, and he could only leave the fatty alone for the time being, despite his reluctance. At the same time, the shorty stared at Feng Wu so hard that his eyes popped out. How was that even possible? What a terrifying man. The shorty finally knew why his tall colleague had screamed like that in Lady Xuanji's room. It had to be this capable man's doing. At that thought, the shorty turned to flee. He could afford to fail a mission, but he only had one life. However, it was no longer up to him if he could leave. He tried to jump onto the wall, but while it seemed so close, it was forever in the distance, no matter how hard he tried. What on earth was going on here? Feng Wu's bone-chilling voice rang out behind him. Do you think Fallen Star Yard is a place where you can come and go as you please? She hadn't reached the cultivation level she wanted, but she had been working hard to get there. The Tai Formation, Grand Secretary Feng, General Chang. These were all things and people she could rely on. The shorty turned to glare at Feng Wu. You brat! What did you do? Feng Wu smiled. Since you're already here, you may as well fight me. I won't. The shorty glared at Feng Wu. The assassin had no idea what cultivation level the man behind Feng Wu was at, but since he could subdue his fellow assassin in one move, he had to be a spiritual lord at least. How was he supposed to fight this girl with that man around? He won't interfere. Feng Wu walked toward the shorty with a grin. You mean it? The assassin asked. Feng Wu said earnestly, yes, as long as I win. The shorty was so mad that his face twisted. He wouldn't interfere if she won, but he would if she lost? What was the point of fighting? At that thought, the shorty seemed to notice a loophole. He couldn't jump over the wall leading to the street, but the wall separating the house from their next-door neighbor seemed unguarded. He didn't know how he knew that, but he trusted his instincts. When Feng Wu wasn't looking, the shorty ran as fast as he could, jumped over the wall, and headed for Feng Manor. Run, run, run. The shorty had forgotten completely about killing Feng Wu. All he could think of was running. He didn't want to be killed. However, he failed to notice the smile in Feng Wu's eyes when he jumped over the wall. Fallen Star Yard was on the edge of the formation, where the formation wasn't as effective as it was at the core. Why was Feng Manor the only direction he could run in? Feng Wu had closed off all the other 3 directions and lured her prey into the center of the formation in Feng Manor. The shorty smirked when he landed in Feng Manor. However, the next second his smile froze on his face, for he could clearly sense some electric arcs flashing around him. All was dark except for the lightning which surrounded him. There was nowhere for him to hide. Moreover, he felt like he had been sucked into a swamp, and gravity seemed to be pulling him even further down. The shorty tried to jump up, but realized that he couldn't. Meanwhile, Feng Wu had followed him and jumped over the wall herself. Chapter 1065. Did she win? Chapter 1065. Did she win? Seeing the malicious look in the shorty's eyes, Feng Wu smiled. Keep running. Why did you stop? The short assassin was full of despair. He had been so confident when he came here today to kill Feng Wu, but he had lost 2 companions before they could achieve anything. Realizing that he had nowhere to go, the shorty drew out his sword and struck at Feng Wu at an impossible angle. He had figured it out. With that mighty cultivator around, he had no hope of winning. In a situation like this, his only way out was to take Feng Wu hostage. However, when he struck at Feng Wu, he realized that his power had been suppressed. He had reached perfection in the spiritual elder stage, but had now regressed by an entire level. That was to say, he was a level 7 spiritual grandmaster now. How was that even possible? The shorty was astonished. Exactly what strange place had he set foot in? How could such a frightening thing happen? Feng Wu smiled. Welcome to my Tai formation. Your power has been reduced by an entire level. Now we can start. She struck out. During those 7 days, Feng Wu was only able to master 3 stances of Fallen Star swordplay. The first stance of Fallen Star swordplay, Sword of the Other World. Feng Wu's sword swept through the air, blowing cherry blossom petals down from the tree. The shorty grinned maliciously. Even when I'm a stage weaker, I'm still more than you can handle. His blade glinted. Clang! The blades clashed, sending sparks into the air. Feng Wu stumbled back 7 steps, but the shorty was only pushed 1 step back. He looked surprised. Aren't you a level 4 spiritual grandmaster? From that strike, he could tell that Feng Wu was more than that. Feng Wu smiled. A level 4 spiritual grandmaster? I haven't been that for quite a while. She was right. The assassins had been sent by the Zhou family, for they knew what cultivation level she was at. After that assassin failed in the alley, they hadn't waited long to send another one. A fierce look flickered in Feng Wu's eyes. The Zhou family was almost impossible to guard against. The second stance of Fallen Star swordplay, Dancing Dragon in the Moonlight. Feng Wu had been pushed back 7 steps to counteract the impact of the shorty's strike, and she now dashed toward him, swift as a ghost. The next second, Feng Wu nimbly moved her wrist and stabbed at the shorty's heart. It was so fast, and the angle she struck at was impossible to defend against. The shorty had a ferocious look in his eyes, and his face twisted. Shielding his chest with his sword, he sent a streak of sword energy at Feng Wu. Clang! There was another violent fluctuation of energy. Feng Wu stumbled back 3 steps. This time the shorty did the same. He stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. How could this happen? He had been winning just then, but why were they exerting the same level of energy all of a sudden? He was sure that he was still performing like a level 7 spiritual grandmaster. If the shorty had looked down on Feng Wu in the beginning, he was on the alert now. Her expression unmoved and her gaze calm, Feng Wu raised her sword. In the Tai formation, immense spiritual essence gathered around her. An invisible sword energy spread out from her. All of a sudden, the shorty looked scared. Shit. That sword energy was so terrifying. At that moment, Feng Wu raised her flaming sword. The third stance of Fallen Star swordplay, Fatal Thunder. After Feng Wu's furious cry, tremendous sword energy rushed toward the short assassin. He had thought that he would be able to withstand her attacks, but at that moment, fear filled his eyes. Chapter 1066. No, I am a level 7 spiritual grandmaster. Chapter 1066. No, I am a level 7 spiritual grandmaster. He was scared, for he saw that he was going to lose. Thud. Feng Wu's sword pierced his belly. Feng Wu could have stabbed him in the heart, but she didn't, for she had plans for him. You! Blood gushed out of the shorty's mouth. He turned to stare at Feng Wu with a look of disbelief. He couldn't believe it. He had lost to a girl. Holding the hilt, Feng Wu pulled flaming sword out. There was the sound of splashing blood. Just then Feng Wu felt something click inside her. Was this happening? She could make a breakthrough just like that. Without thinking, Feng Wu stuck flaming sword into the ground, then sat down cross-legged. With Chang San's protection, the shorty wouldn't get the chance to harm her. Feng Wu had crippled the short assassin, and he lay crumpled on the ground and watched blood ooze out of the hole in his stomach. He could sense the life draining slowly from his body. Overwhelmed by a mix of rage, regret, and frustration, he turned to look at Feng Wu. He was surprised by what he saw. He thought that Feng Wu was going to kill him, but at that critical moment, Feng Wu sat down cross-legged. What was she doing? The next second, the shorty was dumbfounded. A breakthrough. That girl was making a breakthrough after fighting him, and she was doing it in front of him. A breakthrough was exactly what Feng Wu was having. She had already reached perfection as a level 6 spiritual grandmaster, and was very close to level 7. She had been waiting for a chance, and the fight tonight had inspired her. Hence, Feng Wu sat down and began to make a breakthrough, ignoring the fact that the assassin was still there. There was the sound of the fluctuation of spiritual essence. Xiao Wu, are you a level 6 spiritual grandmaster now? Resting her arms on the wall, Chaoge looked at Feng Wu in excitement. Feng Wu smiled. No, I'm a level 7 spiritual grandmaster now. Chaoge was speechless. She had no idea when Xiao Wu became a level 6, to say nothing of the fact that she had become a level 7 in such a short time. Chaoge had thought that she was making quick progress, but her speed was nothing compared with Feng Wu's. No. Without another word, Chaoge turned to run off. Where are you going? Feng Wu was bewildered. To work on my cultivation. Chaoge clenched her fists and left after those words. They were all still junior cultivators, and the difference in their capabilities wasn't that great. It would grow bigger as they became stronger. Chaoge feared that she might not even be capable enough to be Feng Wu's friend anymore. Chaoge wasn't the only one stunned by Feng Wu's breakthrough. After hearing this, the others all ran back to their rooms and started cultivating. The shorty watched with his mouth agape. Was everyone in Fallen Star Yard that diligent? Getting to her feet, Feng Wu clapped her hands and smoothed out the non-existent wrinkles in her clothes. Then, she crouched down in front of the shorty and stared at him with a half-smile. You can start talking now. About what? The assassin gritted his teeth. Feng Wu stared at him like he was an idiot. Did you think I spared your life for you to breathe fresh air? I'm not going to tell you anything. Just kill me. Feng Wu smiled. I see. You're not afraid of me. Good. Feng Wu winked at General Chang. Chapter 1067. This terrifying teenage girl. Chapter 1067. This terrifying teenage girl. She noticed that General Chang had lost his patience already, and he looked like he couldn't wait to make his move. As soon as Feng Wu rose to her feet, General Chang went over to the assassin. The general was as capable as befitting someone whom Jun Linyuan had taught himself. In less than 5 minutes, the torture made the shorty wish he was dead. He gave Feng Wu everything she wanted to know. Someone found the flying guillotine, and put a price on your head. The reward is as much as 100,000 top-grade spiritual stones. 100,000? Top-grade spiritual stones. Feng Wu rubbed his chin. I didn't know I'm that expensive. General Chang glanced at Feng Wu. The flying guillotine always charges a lot. 100,000 is just slightly higher than the standard price. Feng Wu didn't know what to say. These three are spiritual elders, and are levels 7, 8, and 9 respectively. This is the second attack. I won't be surprised if there's a third wave. You better be prepared. Feng Wu asked, there's more? General Chang nodded. The mission is to kill you, but it's failed. With these three dead, the flying guillotine will re-evaluate you. They'll reassess your threat level and value, so as to raise the price and give the job to spiritual lords, who charge more. How many spiritual stones does a spiritual lord normally charge for a job? Feng Wu frowned a little. She was used to plotting against people all the time, not the other way round. You're not important enough for a spiritual lord yet. They won't take just any job. Given how high their asking price is, it won't just be double the amount. Feng Wu was relieved. But a bunch of spiritual elders will be a lot to handle too. Feng Wu secretly rejoiced, feeling lucky that she had snapped up General Chang. Otherwise, she didn't know what could have happened tonight. She could ask for Grand Secretary Feng's help, but she couldn't go to him all the time. All of a sudden, Feng Wu's eyes flickered. Did the Zhou family send them? Asked Feng Wu. General Chang shook his head. They'll never reveal information on their clients, or no one will hire them again. Feng Wu smiled. Although she had no evidence, not everyone had 100,000 spare spiritual stones lying around. Only someone who hated her to the core would be willing to pay such a huge amount. The Zhou family was her instinctive guess. It had to be them and no one else. Feng Wu smiled. They can't reveal their clients, but... She grinned at the shorty. If other people can put a price on me, can I do it to them? General Chang glanced at Feng Wu, amazed by her quick reaction. The short assassin smirked. Once you're on the list, you can't turn it around, or it'll disrupt order in the assassination circle. That made sense. If one side put a price on their rival, and the other side did the same, there would be a price war, and things would get messy. The organization would gain profits in the short term, but its long-term development would be hampered. All right. Feng Wu was able to pick up the implication immediately. I can't put a price on them, but someone else can, right? The shorty nodded, and couldn't help but pity the people who had hired him. This terrifying teenage girl wasn't as harmless and weak as assessed by his organization. Feng Wu didn't know what Chang San did, but the tough assassin had just become very obedient. Their organization was a very secretive one, and people couldn't just walk into their stronghold. They would need directions. Chapter 1068 The Dark World. Chapter 1068 The Dark World. Clearly, Feng Wu's threat worked, and the shorty had no choice but to tell her how to find his organization. Go to the grocery store at the end of the 3rd alley on East Avenue and ask for Guan 7. He'll show you in, but you have to be there before dawn. Feng Wu looked up at the sky and saw that it happened to be the right time. She nodded a little, then went back to her room. What about these two? Chang San's voice came from behind her. Feng Wu smirked. They tried to kill me. Killing them would be too good for them. Just leave them in the Tai formation. They'll become human fertilizer. Human fertilizer. Both the assassins who were still alive stared at Feng Wu in disbelief. What did she mean by human fertilizer? Feng Wu smiled. Exactly what it sounded like. The Tai formation consumed a lot of spiritual essence. Although she could get it from all those top-grade spiritual stones underground, the spiritual essence which these two had would work as well. Feng Wu put on her disguise and soon, she was unrecognizable. Chang San stared at her in astonishment, unable to recognize this ordinary, sallow teenage girl, who looked no different from the rest of the crowd. Feng Wu waved at Chang San. You don't need to come with me. I'll be exposed if you show up. Although the news hadn't gotten around yet, once everyone learned that Chang San was the captain of her guard, They would easily make the connection. Changsen asked, "Are you sure?" Feng Wu waved him off. "It's fine. Stay here. No one will recognize me when I look like this." Convinced, Changsan nodded. In the dark, Feng Wu moved as nimbly as a cat, and soon disappeared into the night. At the end of the third alley on East Avenue, there was a small orange lamp. Feng Wu didn't know that assassins could run their business in an actual store, let alone on East Avenue, the busiest street. That was interesting. Feng Wu was intrigued by the mysterious boss of the flying guillotine. Following the shorty's instructions, Feng Wu knocked on the door. 3 long knocks and 2 short ones, repeated 3 times. After the knocking, a quiet voice asked on the other side of the door, "It's the middle of the night. Who is it?" It sounded like a standard question, but it contained some secret information. Answer incorrectly, and one would only be welcomed by an ordinary shop assistant. The correct answer, on the other hand, would lead you to an assassin organization. Feng Wu used a husky voice. "I've come from afar and I ask for a bowl of water." It had to be those exact words in that exact order. As expected, the door opened with a creak after those words. Feng Wu didn't look around after she walked in, but only glanced at both sides out of the corners of her eyes. The layout looked like a grocery store. The shelves were lined with daily supplies, and looked perfectly normal. But then, a young assistant went up to Feng Wu. "Miss, what are you looking for?" That was the second code. Luckily, Chang San had interrogated those 2 assassins separately. After questioning them repeatedly, he only gave the information to Feng Wu after making sure that they gave the same answer. "Do you have lotus silk of ice silkworms?" Feng Wu asked with an indifferent look on her face. The young man remained passive as he said to Feng Wu, "We don't display such precious goods on the shelves here. Please come with me." Feng Wu's eyes lit up. She was getting somewhere. Following the young man, Feng Wu saw him raise a curtain at an opening, so she followed him in. One moment, they were in a grocery store that smelled like daily life. The next second, Chapter 1069, The Girl from Frozen Forest 1. Chapter 1069 The Girl from Frozen Forest 1. Feng Wu felt an eerie, chilly air surround her. On the other side of the curtain was a world of light with rich colors, while on this side lay a cold, dark world. The moment Feng Wu stepped into this dark world, for some unknown reason, she was secretly excited. Guided by the young man, Feng Wu arrived at a small dark hut. It was narrow and unlit except for a single dim lamp on the bar counter in front of her. The bar counter was quite high, and almost reached Feng Wu's chest. It looked a lot like a pawn shop. Behind the counter sat a person, whose face was hidden in the dark. Feng Wu couldn't see it clearly, but she could tell that the person was elderly. "Young lady, please fill in this form." Feng Wu took the form and read it. She was supposed to fill in things like the person she wanted to kill, their capability, background, and so on and so forth. Who should she kill then? In fact, Feng Wu had been thinking about that question on her way here. If it were up to her, she would have Zhuo Ming killed. With their clan head gone, the Zhuo family would be much less of a problem. Therefore, Feng Wu filled in the form with Zhuo Ming's information. Once the form was filled, Feng Wu put the pen back on the pen rack. She then blew the ink dry and handed the form back. Zhuo Ming's name was big and clear. The old man in the dark took the form with scrawny fingers and soon, there were some clacking sounds. Resting her hands on the counter, Feng Wu stood on tiptoe and looked into the shadows. That was strange. There was a light, so no matter how dark the shadows were, she should be able to see his features a little. But this man didn't seem to have any facial features at all. The eerie, grim, and dark atmosphere and cold wind gave one the creeps. But Feng Wu was a bold girl. Instead of being scared, she secretly reveled in it. Before long, the sound of the clacking abacus stopped. Soon, the filled form was handed back to Feng Wu. At the bottom of the page was the price of this contract. Seeing the number, Feng Wu's pupils contracted and she felt like crying out. That was so expensive. The flying guillotine was as efficient as they were said to be. That was quick. Feng Wu stared at the mysterious man inside in astonishment. That's a lot of money. Feng Wu had thought the 100,000 top-grade spiritual stones on her was already a high enough price, but the price on Zhuo Ming was. You still have 2 more chances. The old man spoke in a cold voice. Feng Wu's expression clearly said that she couldn't afford it. Feng Wu scratched her head. Well, she wouldn't be able to pay for it, even if she dug up all the spiritual stones under Grand Secretary Feng's house. So Zhuo Ming could wait. She would do it herself someday. Since she had 2 more chances, an idea struck Feng Wu. How about Zhuo Qingwan? Feng Wu wrote quickly. Before long, she filled in Zhuo Qingwan's information and handed the form in. The mysterious man glanced at the form and started calculating on the abacus again. The clacking sound got louder. It seemed to go on forever. Feng Wu was a little more hopeful, thinking that since Zhuo Qingwan was still a spiritual grandmaster, she wouldn't be too expensive to kill. The man spent a little less time with this form. About 5 minutes later, the piece of paper was handed back. Feng Wu felt like crying out when she saw the number this time. That's so expensive. But why? Feng Wu couldn't accept it. Chapter 1070, The Girl from Frozen Forest 2. Chapter 1070, The Girl from Frozen Forest 2. The number on the page read, 1 million top-grade spiritual stones. You've got to be kidding me. Feng Wu had thought that the 100,000 top-grade spiritual stones on her head was expensive enough. But why did Zhuo Qingwan cost 1 million? That was 10 times what Feng Wu herself cost. Isn't she a spiritual elder? Why is she so expensive? I don't agree. Feng Wu shouted at the man inside. The mysterious man probably hadn't heard a protest like this before, and was noticeably taken aback. But he came back to himself soon enough. Taking the paper back, he began to write. Soon, he listed the calculation process. Feng Wu saw the list, and almost jumped to her feet. Jun Lingyuan's probable fiancé, 50% increase on the fee. True Phoenix blood, 50% increase on the fee. The final pupil of the Master of Firmament Palace, 50% increase on the fee. Feng Wu felt like vomiting blood. So, Zhuo Qingwan was 10 times more expensive because of all those things? Damn it. Feng Wu clenched her fists. I can't afford that. The man inside didn't show any reaction to Feng Wu's words. Feng Wu asked, I still have another chance, right? Another form was handed out. Feng Wu nibbed on the end of the pen. She only had 3 chances, and she had wasted the first 2. She had to make this one work. Which of the Zhuo family members should she kill? Feng Wu began to run down the Zhuo family tree in her head. Forget about old Master Zhuo. Killing him would cost a fortune. Even if she could afford it, the flying guillotine probably wouldn't have an assassin capable enough to kill him. She couldn't afford the price to kill Zhuo Ming. So he was dead. She should probably forget about the other members of that generation. Moving down the family tree, her best choice was probably one of Zhuo Qingwan's siblings. Feng Wu ran through her memory and recalled that Zhuo Qingwan had a younger sister, Zhuo Qingyu, who seemed rather annoying. Zhuo Qingwan also had 2 older brothers and 2 younger ones. Zhuo Ming was very virile. Feng Wu recalled that Zhuo Qingwan's second older brother was Zhuo Qinglu, and he had been there when Zhuo Qingwan destroyed her true phoenix blood. Feng Wu still vividly remembered his malicious smirk. It was never too late to take revenge. Zhuo Qinglu it was then. Feng Wu wrote down Zhuo Qinglu's name. There came the clacking sound of the abacus again, and shortly afterward, Feng Wu was given back the piece of paper. Feng Wu was relieved when she saw the content. Finally, the price wasn't exorbitant this time. Of course, while it wasn't as expensive compared with the price before, it was still very high. Zhuo Qinglu was a mere spiritual grandmaster. He didn't hold any important position, nor was he the favorite child of the family. Moreover, he visited brothels all the time, which made him a very easy target. Hence, he had the same price as Feng Wu, 100,000 top-grade spiritual stones. Feng Wu snorted inwardly, wondering if the contract on her had easy target written on it as well. After handing the form back, Feng Wu asked. Can I pay with spiritual medicine? Yes. Hence, Feng Wu started to take medicinal pills out. Feng Wu didn't have much money, but she had medicinal pills, for she was an extraordinary medicine refiner. Her master had set a rule forbidding her from selling her pills for money. To this day, Feng Wu still couldn't understand why. But she wasn't selling them now, but using them as currency. That wasn't against the rule, right? Shall I pay a deposit now? The full amount. The person inside sounded baffled. He then added in a quiet voice, there will be 3 attempts. You'll be paid back in full if the target isn't killed after that. Chapter 1071. The Girl from Frozen Forest 3. Chapter 1071. The Girl from Frozen Forest 3. Good. Feng Wu gathered all the spare medicinal pills she had, and was able to raise 100,000 top-grade spiritual stones worth. She then handed them over. It'll be done in 7 days, the voice said quietly before Feng Wu left. Feng Wu smiled a little. It was expensive, but if Zhuoming knew that his family was being hunted by the flying guillotine as well, would he put a price on other people's heads so casually after this? It was the break of dawn when Feng Wu was ready to go home. The sky had just started to brighten up, though it was still dim outside. Along the silent street, a figure as nimble as a cat jumped from roof to roof at top speed. Right at that moment, all of a sudden, Feng Wu felt a streak of spiritual essence sweep over her. That was. Feng Wu looked down to find a carriage racing along the street. She had no idea who the passenger was, but that streak of spiritual essence definitely came from inside the carriage. Feng Wu stared at the carriage. It was lit up from inside by 2 lanterns. They had the insignia of Northern Feng Mansion on them. Could it be Lady Northern Feng, her godmother? Feng Wu wondered if she should go down and say hello. However, it was Feng Sun inside, not Lady Northern Feng. Feng Sun had just gotten back from the suburbs where Master Ling Hu lived. He was covered with sweat after a long night of training, and was dozing off in the carriage. He wanted to go back home more than anything else, so that he could lie down and sleep. The training was a rough stretching session which was so intense that all his tendons were cramping, and he was almost crying at the pain. It just so happened that Feng Sun had a nose sharper than a dog's. He was resting with his eyes closed when he caught a faint scent. A scent. It was so familiar. Nothing would have happened if Feng Sun had let it pass. That way, Feng Wu would be able to go home as planned, and so would Feng Sun. Unfortunately, something dawned on Feng Sun, and he caught that idea in a fleeting moment. Ah! Feng Sun cried out. It's her! Her! Then, the guards of the mansion watched as their young lord rushed out of the carriage, rambling words that no one else understood. Moreover, he jumped onto the roof right away. My lord! The guards were baffled when their young lord ran away. They followed him immediately. Feng Wu looked over her shoulder to find Feng Sun behind her. She smiled and was about to greet him when Feng Sun ran toward her, roaring, You ugly girl! I finally found you. Stop right there. Feng Sun's words were a thunderclap in Feng Wu's ears. Ugly girl? Feng Wu saw the light right away. She wasn't dressed like the ugly girl from the forest of northern border city before, but she had the same sallow skin, which was created by the same cream. Ugly, stop. I know the smell of the cream you used to cover your face. It's you. Stop running. Feng Wu knew what this was about before Feng Sun finished talking. The cream had given her away. And Feng Sun, the last thing Feng Wu would do right now was say hello to him. She would blow her own cover. She turned and started running right away. You're running away. How dare you? Feng Sun yelled angrily. He couldn't believe this was happening. Feng Sun recalled everything that had happened in frozen forest of northern border city. He had been so nice to that girl. Chapter 1072. The Girl from Frozen Forest 4. Chapter 1072. The Girl from Frozen Forest 4. When Xianyi tried to cast that girl out, Feng Sun stood up for her. Boss Jun didn't like her, but Feng Sun still looked after her. He had trusted her despite everything. And what happened after that? That little scumbag stole their immortal spiritual fruit. They were going to save Bao Er with that. Ah! Feng Sun shouted in vexation. He had been too tired to even move a finger, but after spotting the ugly girl, his speed was frightening. Feng Wu ran in the front, and would look over her shoulder from time to time, only to realize that the distance between them was getting smaller and smaller. That wouldn't do. If Feng Sun caught up with her, and forced her to wash the makeup off, Feng Wu couldn't begin to imagine the look on Feng Sun's face when that happened. All Feng Wu wanted to do now was find a quiet corner, and wash that cream off her face. That should do the trick. Feng Wu was pondering that idea when, thud, from close behind, Feng Sun hit her with something. Instantly, a stench filled Feng Wu's nostrils. Feng Sun guffawed. Ugly girl. I bet you're thinking about finding a place to wash that disguise cream off your face, so that I won't find you. Am I right? Feng Wu threw a dirty look at Feng Sun over her shoulder. The look on her face reminded Feng Sun of an angry bunny, and he cracked up. That's a stink bug, and that smell will stay on you for the next 24 hours, once it hits you. Haha. You won't be able to hide from me. Feng Wu was infuriated. Was she supposed to give in just like that? Never. But if she kept running in a straight line over the roofs, Feng Sun was sure to catch up to her. She had to get to the ground. The winding alleys were her only hope. At that thought, Feng Wu leapt, moving as fast as a streak of lightning. She jumped off the roof, and rushed into a house on her left up ahead. Feng Sun smirked. Where do you think you're going? Feng Sun's guards had caught up to him, and were following him with loud footsteps, which woke many people at this early hour. Feng Sun turned around and told his guards, Go tell Xian II and Boss Jun that I found the ugly girl. Get them here ASAP. He didn't dare to treat this lightly. After all, a chance like this didn't happen every day, and he couldn't afford to lose her again. It hurts. Taking a deep breath, Feng Sun realized that his muscles were sore from head to toe, and he felt really weak. She just happened to show up on the day he had an intensive stretching session. Otherwise, Feng Sun was convinced that he would have caught the stealthy girl if his condition was as usual. Jumping into the back garden of a house, Feng Wu wanted to hide, but the smell was so strong that she knew she wouldn't be able to get away with it. Involuntarily, Feng Wu reached into her ring space to look for some pills. She remembered that she had made some air freshener, but never got around to using it. That was why she had left it in some remote corner. Her search came back empty. She searched again and still found nothing. Feng Wu smacked her head in frustration. She remembered now. She had indeed made some air freshener and left it in a corner, but a moment ago, when she had tried to pay for the bounty, she took out all her spare medicine, and that air freshener had been in the pile. At that thought, Feng Wu wanted to smack her own head. That was so. Ugly girl, you're not getting away. Just then, Feng Sun jumped off the wall as well and dashed at Feng Wu. However, just before he reached her, Chapter 1073, The Girl from Frozen Forest 5. Chapter 1073, The Girl from Frozen Forest 5. Thud! He stepped into a mud pit. But it was more than a mud pit. It was filled with dog shit. Feng Wu had covered the pit with leaves. In the dim light at this hour, and with the stench around Feng Wu, Feng Sun missed the pit, and stepped right into it. As soon as he stumbled into the pit, Feng Sun shrieked. Arg! Feng Wu chuckled into her palm. That's what you get for chasing me and refusing to leave me alone. Of course, Feng Wu didn't linger. She immediately turned to run. She knew perfectly well that Feng Sun's anger would drive him on a harder pursuit. That was her voice. Infuriated, Feng Sun cursed. He then pulled his feet out of the pit to find his boots covered in dog shit. Holding his breath at the stench, he took off his boots, tossed them aside, then ran after Feng Wu on bare feet. Ugly girl. Stop. Stop right there. Feng Sun sounded angry and frustrated. Feng Wu was anxious, and didn't know what to do. She wanted to tell Feng Sun to stop. Trying to catch her would only harm them both. Feng Wu turned around and warned him, "Stop chasing me. You'll never catch me." "Ha!" Feng Sun snorted. "Here's what I'm going to tell you over my dead body." "That serious?" Feng Wu cringed. Coming from Feng Sun, that was a massive grudge. So, Feng Wu's only option now was to run as fast as she could. But she couldn't run forever. Feng Sun on his own wasn't all that threatening. But if Xianyi showed up later, or Jun Lin Yuan, Feng Wu knew that she wouldn't be able to get away. What should she do? Feng Wu racked her brain for a way out. The stink bug was her main problem. The smell was impossible to remove, and she would be found out wherever she went. Therefore, removing the stink was her top priority. But how? Feng Wu's thoughts whirled. Could she go to a pharmacy? Feng Wu shook her head. She could see that the pharmacy was still quite some distance away, and even Feng Sun would consider that possibility. Maybe he had already stationed someone outside the pharmacy. Air freshener, where could she find some air freshener? Yes. Feng Wu's eyes lit up. A brothel. Brothels were very particular about hygiene, and wouldn't have any foul smells in their buildings. They had to have some air freshener around. Where were the brothels in the imperial capital? Feng Wu hadn't been to one, but she knew the imperial capital well enough to know the general direction. Feng Sun was still running after Feng Wu when he saw her change direction. He frowned. Where is she going? Shit. Feng Sun was quick-witted enough to figure out the answer. What's wrong? Xianyi showed up at that moment. Quickly. That girl is heading for the brothels. Stop her. Xianyi glanced at Feng Sun. Is she really that ugly girl? Yes. It's her. This may be our only chance. If we lose her, we may never find her again. Go get her. She smells like a stink bug. Feng Sun and Xianyi were going to split up when... Hey, are you chasing something? A teenager leaned against a banister and grinned at Feng Sun. It was none other than Yuminji. An idea struck Feng Sun when he saw Yuminji. Yuminji. He wasn't the only one who was tricked by the ugly girl in Frozen Forest. Yuminji was a victim too. Chapter 1074. What a scene. Chapter 1074. What a scene. Feng Sun felt that he was that close to catching the ugly girl. But Yuminji still didn't have a clue. At that thought, Feng Sun had a sense of superiority. Yuminji tapped his chin with a slender finger. Did I hear you talking about catching some ugly girl? It's none of your business, and I'm not telling you. Feng Sun tried to drag Xianyi away. He decided he would show the ugly girl off to Yuminji after he caught her. Feng Sun and Xianyi left in a hurry. Behind them, Yuminji rubbed his chin with a brooding look in his eyes. The ugly girl. Wasn't that little Feng Wu? She had been spotted by Feng Sun? How careless of her. Yuminji couldn't bring himself to see Feng Wu getting mistreated. He followed them without making a sound. Feng Sun and Xianyi ran very fast. When they got there, their men had already surrounded the busiest brothel in the imperial capital. Young lord, that girl slipped in here. Feng Wu, the captain of the Northern Feng Mansion's guards, cupped his hands at Feng Sun. Feng Sun asked, all set? Feng Wu said, we have men everywhere in the area. There's no way that the girl can get away. Feng Sun nodded. However, recalling how stealthy the girl could be, he said to Feng Wu, go back and bring the dog here. Just as a precaution. After giving the instruction, Feng Sun and Xianyi entered Perching Phoenix Terrace. The building known as Perching Phoenix was richly decorated and looked luxurious. Their nostrils were filled with a warm, pleasant smell as soon as they set foot inside. Madame Cui, the madam of Perching Phoenix, was hosting some guests when a male servant came in. Young Lord Feng and young Lord Xian are here. Both were popular figures in the imperial capital. They might not know everyone, but everyone knew who they were. Mouths fell open after they entered the building. Madame Cui rolled her eyes grumpily when she heard those words. Are you kidding me? How would two prominent figures like them show up here? We might have some beautiful girls here in Perching Phoenix, but they aren't beautiful enough to draw those two here. The servant said hastily, it's true. They're already in the building. Madame Cui looked over her shoulder, just in case, and what she saw astonished her. Oh my! Young Lord Feng and young Lord Xian, to what do we owe this honor? Are you here to enjoy the flower festival of Fengqi, or Miss Perching Phoenix? The so-called flower festival was an auction for the rights to take the virginity of the girl known as Fengqi. Miss Fengqi, who was named after Perching Phoenix, had grown up in the brothel. She had learned drawing, chess, calligraphy, and musical instruments from famous teachers, and had been entertaining her guests with her talents rather than her flesh until she was 16. Tonight, Madame Cui decided to sell her at a satisfying price. Madame Cui's eyes lit up when she saw Feng Sun and Xianyi. Talk about bigwigs and real descendants of influential families. She had been entertaining some young descendants of big families, but as soon as Feng Sun and Xianyi showed up, Madame Cui wanted to give them all her attention. Although Madame Cui couldn't wait to serve these two, their minds obviously weren't on that Miss Fengqi. Feng Sun frowned and waved Madame Cui off. Out of my way. Go back to whatever you were doing. After that, he and Xianyi headed for the stairs. An idea struck Madame Cui. Were they going backstage to look for Miss Fengqi directly? Young Lord Feng was using his rights as a young lord. A stage had been built at the center of the main hall. It was decorated with flowers of all colors and lit up brightly. Chapter 1075, Where S. Fengwu. Chapter 1075 Where S. Fengwu. They had prepared enough flower petals for Miss Fengqi's performance later. In front of the stage, more than 20 chairs had been set out. Only the 3 chairs that were in the front row were made from expensive red sandalwood. There were 6 chairs in the second row, and in the third. Mu the Sixth sat on the very left in the front row, which indicated that he wasn't the most important guest tonight, but the second most important. The one sitting in the middle was Zhuo Qinglu, the second son of the Zhuo family. Mu the Sixth and Zhuo Qinglu found each other an eyesore, and were engaged in a secret competition to pick Miss Fengqi's cherry. Mu the Sixth turned around to find Feng Sun in the hall, and rose to his feet excitedly. Brother Feng. He left his seat, and ran happily toward Feng Sun. It's you, little Mu the Sixth. Feng Sun patted him on the shoulder. Brother, what brings you here? Are you here for Miss Fengqi as well? Teehee, since you're interested in her, I'll withdraw my bid. Mu the Sixth was Feng Sun's minion, and more than anything, liked to follow Feng Sun around. He had bid for the VIP seat in the middle against Zhuo Qinglu just then, but lost to the latter by a narrow margin. Mu the Sixth was still holding a grudge. Now that his brother Feng was here. Ho! Mu the Sixth took Feng Sun to the best seat, but Feng Sun waved him off. Don't let me keep you. I have an errand to run. Errand? Mu the Sixth forgot about Miss Fengqi right away, for nothing could be more important than his brother Feng. Brother, what errand? Let me do it for you. Just name it. Mu the Sixth looked at Feng Sun eagerly. Seeing how eager the guy was, Feng Sun snapped. You can't handle her. Out of my way. Go back to your game. After that, Feng Sun waved his hand, and rushed up the stairs and Perching Phoenix. Gosh, dear young lord. Madame Cui was flustered. This was Perching Phoenix, a brothel which guys visited to have fun. Right now it was business hours, and there was something going on behind all the closed doors. A felon has just run inside. If you still want to have a business, keep your mouth shut. Feng Sun looked up, and threw an intimidating glance at Madame Cui. Feng Sun might be a goofball around Feng Wu, but when he meant to look the part, he was every bit a young lord. It worked on Madame Cui, who was utterly frightened. While Feng Sun rushed upstairs to search for the girl, what was Feng Wu doing? The moment she ran into Perching Phoenix, she instinctively headed for the pharmacy. The pharmacy at Perching Phoenix had as much incense as it did aphrodisiac. Feng Wu quickly went through the inventory after she entered, but to her disappointment, they didn't have the supreme grade air freshener here. Luckily, Feng Wu was able to find a lot of woody ambergris. With this ingredient, Feng Wu would be able to make the supreme grade air freshener herself. Time was of the essence, So Feng Wu grabbed a handful of woody ambergris and the necessary supplementary ingredients, then dashed into the kitchen on the first floor. Because important guests kept coming and going all the time, the kitchen was staffed the whole time, but only by 2 people, one of whom was dozing off. Feng Wu moved unbelievably fast and jumped into the kitchen as nimbly as a cat. She snuck up on the person who was still awake. Thump! Feng Wu hit the guy with the side of her palm, knocking him unconscious. She smiled a little. Immediately after that, she pulled the man up and sat him down in a chair. She even adjusted his position, so that from afar, he looked like he was only taking a nap. Chapter 1076, He has nothing. Chapter 1076, He has nothing. After all that was done, Feng Wu quickly went to the stove. That was right. She was going to use the stove to make that supreme-grade air freshener. Other people wouldn't be able to pull it off, but Feng Wu was a medicine refiner like no other. She could refine medicine even with a stove. Knowing that there was no time to waste, Feng Wu sped up. Feng Sun led his men to search the upper floor of Perching Phoenix. They opened one door after another, but weren't able to find the girl. That's strange. Rubbing his chin, Feng Sun looked anxious. We've surrounded this place so thoroughly that even a bird can't get out. Where did she go? Feng Wu asked. Young master, can't you smell her? Feng Sun frowned. Of course he could if they were close enough, but not when they were hundreds of meters apart. It wasn't like he had the nose of a dog. Moreover, the air in this Perching Phoenix place was filled with a mixture of strong fragrances that could cripple any nose. He almost thought that he couldn't smell properly anymore. That ugly girl. Feng Sun clenched his fists. She was as cunning as a fox. With them at her heels, she was able to come up with the idea to hide in a brothel. That was quick-witted. Hey, is the dog here? Feng Sun stared at Feng Wu impatiently. It's on the way. We should have it soon, said Feng Wu with a bow. Guard the perimeter. We'll get her like catching a rat in a hole. She'll have nowhere to go. Feng Sun looked pleased with himself. His guards was still searching one room after another, and shrieks kept ringing out. But after they flashed the wooden token of Northern Feng Mansion, the shrieks soon stopped. Young lord, the 9 rooms in the east wing were searched. She wasn't there. Young lord, the 9 rooms in the west wing were searched. She wasn't there. Young lord, the 6 teams Feng Wu brought soon searched every room of Perching Phoenix, but they gave Feng Sun the report he wanted to hear the least. Feng Sun opened his eyes wide. No one found her. None of the underlings dared to meet his gaze. Feng Sun raised his voice. No one. His men held their breaths. The young lord could be very terrifying when he threw a tantrum. Only that, for the first time, the leader hesitated. This isn't the time to stammer. Speak. Feng Sun roared. The team leader said. Only that we didn't search Miss Fengqi's room. Why didn't you? Feng Sun snapped. Young masters, what was there? After Feng Sun arrived, Zhuo Qinglu was worried that Miss Fengqi, the girl he had had his eye on all this time, would be taken away by Feng Sun. Therefore he went backstage first. Miss Fengqi had given 2 performances already, and the third one would determine her fate. Which young masters wa? Feng Sun glared. Mu the Sixth had been following Feng Sun, and he grinned when he heard that name. That's Zhuo Qinglu, the second son of the Zhuo family. The team leader said, Yes, young masters with a second blocked the door, and told us that we were offending Miss Fengqi. Who the hell does he think he is? Feng Sun glowered. Show me the way. Oh my, Mu the Sixth was over the moon. Zhuo Qinglu had been so arrogant in front of Mu the Sixth, because he was the direct descendant of the Zhuo family, which was favored by the empire at the moment. Moreover, the Zhuo family had a daughter, Zhuo Qingluan, who was a rising star. Chapter 1077 Miss Fengqi. Chapter 1077 Miss Fengqi. That was why when they were competing over the front row seat, Mu the Sixth hadn't dared to confront him directly, but had done it in a roundabout manner. I know where he is. Come with me. I'll show you the way. Mu the Sixth took off happily, with Feng Sun backing him. He was able to lead the way with his chest sticking out. He complained to Feng Sun as he walked. That's what Qinglu is awful. He has all the vices you can think of. It was only the other day that I saw him snatch an innocent girl off the street, and it seems that he's gotten tired of her already. Now he's here trying to take Miss Fingqi away from me. I've been courting Miss Fingqi since forever. I had a crush on her when she was 13, and I waited 3 whole years for her to reach the right age. And now, that's what Qinglu shows up to steal my fruit. Brother Feng, I've never asked you for anything, but I really need your help this time. Please help me. Mu the Sixth's affection seemed genuine, and he gave Feng Sun a pleading look. Feng Sun smacked Mu the Sixth on the head. What? You want her as your wife? Mu the Sixth glowered. Well, if not that, I can always make her my concubine. Brother Feng, one word from you, and my mum will say yes. Brother. Feng Sun threw a dirty look at him. Help me catch that ugly girl today and I'll help you. Mu the Sixth was thrilled. Great. That's great. Brother, what does that ugly girl look like? Any special features? He rolled up his sleeves and was ready to get his hands dirty. Feng Sun was about to describe the girl, but realized he didn't know how to. The girl had used some cream to disguise herself. She didn't look like herself, and he had no idea if she was going to have a different face now. Feng Sun said in frustration, the girl looks, well, forget about her looks and just sniff around. She was hit with a stink bug, and that smell won't go away for a while. Mu the Sixth nodded eagerly. Sure, I'll find her for you. As they spoke, they reached Miss Fingqi's bedchamber. Miss Fingqi had played a musical instrument and sung. Right now, she was preparing for her third performance, which was a dance. Zhuo Qinglu was guarding the door, and he frowned when he saw the large group of people coming his way. Seeing Mu the Sixth, who was leading the team, Zhuo Qinglu gloated and smirked. Loser, you've got some balls to come back. However, as soon as Zhuo Qinglu spoke, an impolite voice came from behind Mu the Sixth. Who did you just call a loser? Wearing a heavy cape, Feng Sun showed up behind Mu the Sixth. Young Lord Feng. Zhuo Qinglu stared at Feng Sun with a grim look on his face. Move! Feng Sun stared at him. Young Lord Feng, this is Miss Fingqi's. Before Zhuo Qinglu could finish the sentence, Feng Sun reached out and picked Zhuo Qinglu up like he was holding a chicken. Crash! Zhuo Qinglu smashed into the wall. The violent energy seemed to burn up his insides, and blood threatened to rush up his throat. Feng Sun ignored him and headed right into the room. Ah! A frightened shriek rang out inside. Miss Fingqi was changing into a complicated dress, which consisted of dozens of layers, but together, looked as thin as cicada wings. The teenage girl raised her head. She had delicate features and was blushing prettily. Her exquisite shoulder blades looked almost transparent under the light. Of course Miss Fingqi knew who young Lord Feng was. As for the guests tonight, Chapter 1073, The Girl from Frozen Forest 5. Chapter 1073, The Girl from Frozen Forest 5. Thud. He stepped into a mud pit. But it was more than a mud pit. It was filled with dog shit. Feng Wu had covered the pit with leaves. In the dim light at this hour, and with the stench around Feng Wu, Feng Sun missed the pit and stepped right into it. As soon as he stumbled into the pit, Feng Sun shrieked. Arg! Feng Wu chuckled into her palm. That's what you get for chasing me and refusing to leave me alone. Of course, Feng Wu didn't linger. She immediately turned to run. She knew perfectly well that Feng Sun's anger would drive him on a harder pursuit. That was her voice. Infuriated, Feng Sun cursed. He then pulled his feet out of the pit to find his boots covered in dog shit. Holding his breath at the stench, he took off his boots, tossed them aside, then ran after Feng Wu on bare feet. Ugly girl. Stop. Stop right there. Feng Sun sounded angry and frustrated. Feng Wu was anxious and didn't know what to do. She wanted to tell Feng Sun to stop. Trying to catch her would only harm them both. Feng Wu turned around and warned him, "Stop chasing me. You'll never catch me." "Heh," Feng Sun snorted. "Here's what I'm going to tell you over my dead body." "That serious?" Feng Wu cringed. Coming from Feng Sun, that was a massive grudge. So Feng Wu's only option now was to run as fast as she could. But she couldn't run forever. Feng Sun on his own wasn't all that threatening, but if Xianyi showed up later, or Jun Lin Yuan, Feng Wu knew that she wouldn't be able to get away. What should she do? Feng Wu racked her brain for a way out. The stink bug was her main problem. The smell was impossible to remove, and she would be found out wherever she went. Therefore, removing the stink was her top priority. But how? Feng Wu's thoughts whirled. Could she go to a pharmacy? Feng Wu shook her head. She could see that the pharmacy was still quite some distance away, and even Feng Sun would consider that possibility. Maybe he had already stationed someone outside the pharmacy. Air freshener, air freshener. Where could she find some air freshener? Yes. Feng Wu's eyes lit up. A brothel. Brothels were very particular about hygiene and wouldn't have any foul smells in their buildings. They had to have some air freshener around. Where were the brothels in the imperial capital? Feng Wu hadn't been to one, but she knew the imperial capital well enough to know the general direction. Feng Sun was still running after Feng Wu when he saw her change direction. He frowned. Where is she going? Shit. Feng Sun was quick-witted enough to figure out the answer. What's wrong? Xianyi showed up at that moment. Quickly. That girl is heading for the brothels. Stop her. Xianyi glanced at Feng Sun. Is she really that ugly girl? Yes. It's her. This may be our only chance. If we lose her, we may never find her again. Go get her. She smells like a stink bug. Feng Sun and Xianyi were going to split up when. Hey, are you chasing something? A teenager leaned against a banister and grinned at Feng Sun. It was none other than Yuminji. An idea struck Feng Sun when he saw Yuminji. Yuminji. He wasn't the only one who was tricked by the ugly girl in Frozen Forest. Yuminji was a victim too. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.